Chapter 41. Enemies in and out 1. A 5-star knight. Jean had predicted that he would take at least 3 years and 5 at most in order to reach that stage. In fact, the average run candle reached the 5-star stage by the age of 20. However, Jean had defeated the 5-star knight Kajin at the age of 15. While it was true that Kajin had underestimated Jean and had let down his guard, the boy would still win even if they had another duel. You lost against the youngest? Ha! Are you seriously going to lie to us? Does that even make sense? The youngest was only a 3-star knight until not long ago. No matter how much of a moron you are, this is just impossible. Mew and couldn't believe what they heard from Kajin's report. This wasn't a surprising reaction. Jean hadn't done a surprise attack and Kajin hadn't given himself a handicap. The 5-star knight had far more experience and physical strength than the run candle boy. I have no excuses. Or did you go easy on him since he's a pure-blooded run candle? Or did you get bribed by him? That is definitely not the case, miladies. Then what is it? Are you seriously telling me the youngest reached the 5-star stage in such a short amount of time? Do you seriously want us to believe that? Everyone else at the training ground can testify for me. His aura was that of a 5-star knight at least. Ha! Mew frowned deeply and sneered. Forget it. It's my fault for having high expectations for someone like you. Get out of my sight. As soon as Kajin left the room, the two women stared at each other. The youngest is officially baring his fangs against us. Isn't he? And asked her sister. No, it's not just to us. He's baring his fangs against everyone in the clan. We'll have to assign him a mission that's certain to kill him next time. By sending some of our men as well. The Garden of Swords was suddenly in an uproar. The rumor that Jean had defeated Kajin and had officially become the strongest cadet in the intermediate class had spread amongst the servants. However, many amongst them couldn't believe the story, just like Mew and Anne. That was how unbelievably fast Jean had grown. If you counted all the run candles who had become 5-star knights before the age of 16 in the clan's 1,000-year history, there were only 3. The first patriarch Timar, Siren, and Luna. However, the clansmen only knew of his growth in swordsmanship. 5-star in swordsmanship, 4-star in magic, and 4-star in spiritual power. The person in question hadn't expected to reach the 5-star stage so quickly either. He was simply training with the clear stones ever since returning from Mummet, but his aura reached 5-star in no time. During the breaks from the clear stone training sessions, he would cover his sword with aura and maintain it as such. And every time, he could sense aura amassing inside his body at an incredible speed. This phenomenon wasn't happening solely because of Jin's natural talent for swordsmanship. It was due to the synergy. The synergy between the 3 powers flowing in his body. Spiritual energy, mana, and aura. Ordinary people have never had the chance of using all 3 types of energies, so they're unaware of this fact. But Jean noticed that the energies interacted with each other. If one of the powers gets stronger, it influences and strengthens the other 2 as well. Moreover, the most influential energy amongst the 3 is spiritual energy. Therefore, due to the spiritual energy congestion Jean had experienced last time, his spiritual energy had increased, strengthening his 2 other powers as well. In consequence, the channels through which aura and mana flow in his body had increased in number. It was as if Jean had won the lottery without doing a single thing. Now that I've publicly revealed having reached 5-star at the age of 15, my siblings will start getting properly nervous here on out. Jean had made an incredible accomplishment. However, he wasn't strong enough to face his siblings yet. Excluding the Tana twins, the other flag-bearers of the clan could easily trample on Jean if they ever had the chance to. It wasn't just Mew and Anne. There was Joshua, Siren's most likely successor, along with Jin's other older siblings who were aiming to take that position for themselves as well. They now had no choice but to keep an eye on Jean and his growth. The youngest was a thorn in the side of those who were aiming for the position of patriarch. Choosing Barasada during the selection ritual could be considered a coincidence. But revealing his true talents and gaining prominence was a completely different story. It might have been a good idea to stay low and hide my talents for now. But no. Had he revealed his abilities when he was 18, the candidates for the throne would have been less wary of him. However, Jean believed that he had benefited far more by doing the reveal today. From today onwards, people outside of the Runcandle clan will learn of me, of how I became a 5-star knight at the age of 15. Countless clans and alliances will come and take a look at me out of curiosity and wariness. My siblings won't be able to move or aim for my life recklessly due to the observant eyes on me. Moreover, his father Siren Runcandle would most definitely return to the Garden of Swords. He was currently thinking of having someone other than Joshua take over the clan, and was keeping an eye on all his children in the hopes of finding a better successor. Yet, all his children after Luna hadn't been able to satisfy him a single time. However, the only child whom he was content with, Luna, wasn't interested in the throne. In fact, she said that she didn't like this familial conflict and wished to simply observe from the sidelines. Therefore, no matter how strong she was, Siren judged that Luna wasn't suited to rule and lead the clan. He then designated his second child Joshua as his provisional successor, as he was the best alternative after Luna. Joshua was suited to lead the clan personality-wise. While he wasn't extremely satisfactory, he was decisive, level-headed, sharp like a blade, and had a powerful drive. Alternatively, if something ever happened to Joshua, Siren still had a third option. Siren's second son Deepuz, his second daughter Lunsha, or even his third daughter Mary were decent candidates for the throne as well. That was the order amongst the candidates for the Runcandle throne, which solidified over the years as no one stood out particularly. But now there's me. With Jin's arrival, the battlefield for the throne had an upheaval. Siren was someone who didn't care about age and gave opportunities to his children according to their accomplishments. Just like when he sent me on the special mission when I was still in the beginner class, my growth and achievement this time will definitely be reported to Father, and he'll issue some orders. Jean predicted that whatever Siren's orders were going to be, they would include two things. First was a trial. Siren would test Jean with the intention of checking whether the boy was able to overcome his age difference with his older siblings who were already candidates for the throne. Second was protection. Having revealed his true abilities, it was inevitable that Jin's older siblings would start attacking him personally. However, Siren didn't want Jean to be trampled on by his siblings before he could even test his youngest child. Jean was a special case. He was just far too young compared to his other siblings, which was why Siren would exceptionally intervene in his children's conflict. Gilly. Yes, young master. In the near future, many important clans and organizations will request a meeting with the Runcandle clan. They will want to see the new 15-year-old 5-star knight with their own eyes, since rumors of the youngest child of the Runcandles will spread throughout the world. The Ivliano clan of swordsmanship, the Ken clan of spearmanship, the Tuko clan of hand-to-hand combat, and all the other martial clans would want to see Jean. Even national organizations like the Vermont Empire's Imperial Guards and Special Forces, as well as the Dragon King Knights, would send some men. It was the same case for the armed forces around the world like the Hidden Palace, the Black King Mercenaries, and the Ghost Mercenaries. Geez, look at you, bragging with such a smug face, kid. Do you think they've got nothing else to do but to come visit you? To those people, figuring out the changes and trends in the Runcandle clan is of the utmost importance. They're all expecting my achievements to bring change to the current hierarchy amongst the candidates for the throne. So they all need to come personally to check on me. Jean was certain about his predictions not only because he was good at reading the political changes in the clan, but also because of a story he had heard from his past life. He had heard that when Luna became a 5-star knight at the age of 15 as well, countless people had gathered at the clan in order to see her. It was like a legend amongst his siblings. Geez, good for you. Nobody ever cares about a lowly black dragon like me. Yep, that's exactly right. Anyways, once the official requests to visit the clan arrive, Father will return to the Garden of Swords. He'll probably start a banquet as well. I see. The Patriarch will vacate the Black Sea once again. I shall make preparations in advance. I'll leave that in your care, Gilly, and make sure to keep Murakan hidden away from the public. If he transforms into a human and sneaks into the banquet, we're done for. Do you understand? I'm not a kid. I can take care of mice. I will bear that in mind. Murakan glared at Gilly, but the nanny simply avoided making eye contact and looked away. 2 days later, the clan began receiving letters regarding the Runcandle's youngest child, just as Jean had predicted. As Jean had never shown himself to the public outside of the clan, the reporters and envoys were desperate to get more information about him. In fact, all that was known about him outside the clan was his age and his 5-star rank. The rich reporters and journalists bribed the servants of the Garden of Swords in order to get some insider information, whereas the skilled ones went to find the receptionist at the Mytel Kingdom's transfer gate and the Black King Mercenaries' 3rd Corps. Those two were the only group of people around the world who had met Jean in person. However, the receptionist was someone who cared for her life and didn't reveal her clients' information, while the Black King Mercenaries absolutely detested journalists. Meanwhile, the less skilled reporters, in other words, the naive ones who didn't know much about the world, thought that the Runcandles had spread a fake rumor in order to gain some attention. Just what kind of person is Jean Runcandle? The reporters were all sighing and groaning to each other. The Garden of Swords wasn't a place mere reporters could set their foot into. All they could do was wait impatiently as they tried to make use of their connections with other clans, those that had enough influence to enter the Garden of Swords as visitors. And so, another week went by. It was now May 1795. Countless demands and requests to visit the Garden of Swords came rushing to the clan like a broken dam. Everything was going as Jean had predicted. It seems the butlers are extremely busy writing replies to all the requests. These days, young master. When I asked Petro, he mentioned that even the Vermont imperial family sent an official letter. The imperial family? I didn't expect that. Those mystics couldn't hold back their curiosity either, it seems. I find it more mystical that you managed to predict the future so accurately, young Master Jean. Gilly smiled as she felt proud of the boy and continued speaking. Also, Guardian Knight Khan returned to the main house today and announced the Patriarch's decision. He will return in 1 month. The clan is now matching the timing of the visitors with the Patriarch's return. The clan was in an uproar both on the inside and outside due to Jean. However, there were no movements or odd actions from his siblings as of yet. They were simply going on missions or training as usual, and it was the same for Jean. But this wasn't a surprising outcome. Trying to attack or keep Jean in check while the entire clan's attention was on him was a stupid move. The moment they would try to keep him in check, they would be announcing to the world that they feared and or detested their youngest sibling. It would cause great damage to their reputation. But it wasn't as if all his siblings weren't willing to make this stupid move. Why, young master? The man who came running to Jean with a distressed expression was Petro, the second butler. As soon as he saw the butler's face, Jean knew the time had finally come. Elder sisters Mew and Anne must have schemed something again. Petro's entire body was drenched in sweat. It appeared he had run across the enormous Garden of Swords to tell Jean of this urgent news. Take your time to catch your breath, Petro. H.A. Thank you very much. You have been assigned a new mission, young master. But the place you'll be dispatched to is... Where is it? The Colin Ruins. Ha! The Colin Ruins? Young master, the flag-bearers have gone too far this time. The Colin Ruins are in Zipful territory. That is correct. The flag-bearers have gone too far. Thus, Madame Rosa has become enraged. She has already summoned the flag-bearers to admonish them. I believe young Master Jean should go see Madame Rosa as well. Jean calmly nodded and began making his way to the main building. Chapter 42. Enemies in and out, 2. There were a total of 5 flag-bearers who came running to the main building with Rosa's summons. They were the 3rd son Ran, the 4th son Vigo, the 4th daughter Mew, the 5th daughter and finally the 2nd daughter Luncia. Rosa made them stand straight in a single file and glared at them with a dark, heavy gaze. The flurry of shouts and reprimands she had been hurling at them had calmed down a bit. But once Jean entered the room, she raised her voice again. How can you people who call themselves flag-bearers mess up so badly? As Rosa let out a thunderous roar, the documents and pen holder on her table went flying in all 4 directions. In fact, the pen holder cracked and broke apart due to the energy in her voice. Hiya! She let out a deep sigh and turned to Jean. You've arrived. Yes, mother. His siblings' attention turned to him as well. Ran and Vigo's gazes were dyed in annoyance and irritation. Their reactions were natural as they weren't involved in the issuing of his mission. Mew and Anne were openly showing their animosity towards Jean. Their lips were curled upwards, but their pupils were dyed red in bloodthirst, as if they were warning him they'd kill him if they ever had the chance. Meanwhile, Luncia had a calm bearing. She was merely curious to know if her youngest sibling, whom she hadn't seen in a long while, was truly a 5-star knight as the rumors said. Have you heard of the news? Your next mission will be at the Colin ruins. Yes, I've been told. I'm canceling that mission. You won't be going to Colin. Mother! Mew and Anne raised their voices simultaneously and took a couple of steps forward. You wenches only care about killing the youngest, don't you? Did gaining the petty authority and power of a flag-bearer grant you non-existent balls to stand against your mother? Rosa looked down at her daughters with ice-cold eyes. However, the two daughters didn't let themselves get intimidated. Mother, is it really so strange that we're trying to kill the youngest? What? To be honest, I cannot understand why you try to protect the youngest so much. Mew stared at her mother in the eyes. Go on. I dare you to continue yapping with that pie-hole. Have you lost your mind? Ever since we were born, you have merely watched us from the sidelines with father and even encouraged us to fight amongst each other. Mother, was that not because competition is a necessity in our family? She's right, mother. In fact, you must know how much everyone here has been oppressed and pressured by our older siblings while growing up. Back when I was in the intermediate class, I was also sent on highly difficult missions assigned to me by my older siblings. Dozens of times. A moment of silence followed. Mew and Anne weren't completely in the wrong. Conflict and secret harassment between siblings in the Runcandle clan was inevitable. In fact, it was the fate of all Runcandle children. Moreover, Siren and Rosa never intervened to stop the bloodbath occurring amongst their children. Indeed, you two aren't wrong. Competition is necessary, and you can use whatever means at your disposal to come out on top. Rosa spoke with a soft smile. Mew and Anne understood their mother's intentions. Be that as it may, did you two reach the 5-star stage by the age of 15? Ha! You two are different compared to the youngest. Had you two made the same achievements as him in your teenage years, I would have protected you as well. However, you didn't. Rosa openly revealed that she was giving Jean preferential treatment. In other words, you two weren't worthy of my protection and care. As a matter of fact, seeing how you two are now insolently talking back to me after becoming flag-bearers, I don't regret never having protected you two. Mew and Anne's faces distorted as they blinked, dumbfounded. No matter how harsh of an environment the clan was and how cruel one's siblings were, every child in the world would be hurt after hearing such heart-wrenching words from their parents. Ha, you are correct, mother. I was being insensible and naive. Thank you for your guidance, mother. The two girls lowered their heads and turned around, exiting the room. Despite having returned one of your swords each. Luncia merely shrugged and went along with it, whereas Ran and Vigo protested. And mother, why you want us to return a sword? Are you dissatisfied? You should be glad it's only one sword. I personally would have preferred confiscating all the invaluable swords you two took from the clan's armory. So be grateful I didn't do that. The brothers couldn't say anything in return and lowered their heads. Ran and Vigo felt like they were being framed for a crime they hadn't committed, and obviously enough, their frustration and anger diverted to Jean. Our family is so messed up. Things are getting troublesome. Jean discreetly clicked his tongue and thought to himself. Rosa Runcandle. Was she truly rebuking the flag-bearers out of love for Jean? Jean was certain that it wasn't the case. Mother wants me to clash with my siblings far more fiercely and violently. She purposefully summoned elder sister Luncia and elder brothers Ran and Vigo, even though they're unrelated to this incident, in order to have them develop animosity towards me. Correct. Rosa had summoned 3 other flag-bearers in addition to Mew and Anne in order to test Jean. To be more precise, she was testing every single child in this room. She wanted to see how far she could push her children, and whether they'd persistently try to tear each other apart. I wonder how the youngest will pull through this situation. He's a smart boy, so I'm sure he won't act conceited from here on out just because he thinks I'm favoring him. So what will he do? Rosa asked herself. She was excited and curious, but made sure to maintain the furious expression on her face. Would he pretend to defend his siblings and tell her to punish him instead? If he simply stood there with a content smile for having his mother on his side, then that was the end of it. While Jean was a rare genius for reaching 5-star at 15 years old, if that was the extent of his reaction and intelligence, then Rosa was planning on erasing all her interest in her youngest son immediately. Needless to say, even if she were disappointed, he would still be her beloved youngest son. He would just be eliminated from the list of candidates for the succession. If Jean did nothing when she gave him an advantage, Rosa would judge that he wasn't suited to lead the Runcandle clan. Mother, speak freely, Jean. Rosa spoke in a low tone, hiding her excitement. I quite like the mission elder sisters assigned to me. Do you even know where the Colin ruins are? Rosa sneered. Yes, it's in Zipfel territory, and the Runcandles once tried to invade and capture it, but failed to do so. It happened long before I was born, though, so you are aware. Back then, Elder Tellot went to battle with 30 Guardian Knights but faced a predicament. It's now a tourist spot, but the Zipfels are still greatly involved with it. You won't be able to do anything even if you go there. The mission that was assigned to Jean was theft. He had to steal some of the ancient relics the Zipfels were excavating from the Colin ruins. Jean hadn't checked the list of items he had to steal yet, but there were probably at least 3 relics on it. We can't verify that if I don't head there. While it's a dangerous place, I do not believe it's an unreasonable mission. Don't you think elder sisters assigned this mission to me as they believed I was skilled enough for it? What reckless bravado. That, or you're trying to test your mother. Reckless bravado. It wasn't a bad reaction, but it wasn't what Rosa was hoping for. Moreover, if we suddenly change the issuing of the mission, we will be showing our clansmen how lax and careless our clan's system is. No clansman would question the Runcandles just because of something like that. Your sisters were simply trying to harm you, and since they couldn't attack you physically, they took advantage of their authority as flag-bearers. That is exactly what I mean, Mother. Jean grinned brightly. I do not plan on backing away from this fight. If I were to duel elder sisters right here, right now, I will definitely lose miserably. However, if I successfully accomplish my mission, I would be able to deal them a powerful blow. Rosa's eyes glittered. In other words, I have a slight chance of winning this fight. I know it would be wiser for me to back away now, develop my strength, and defeat them in a duel in a few years, but I simply cannot wait that long, as elder sisters are getting on my nerves. You could easily die at the Colin ruins with the smallest of mistakes. Are you really confident in yourself? Yes, and if I return successfully from the mission, I'd like to be awarded the swords that were confiscated from elder brothers. Since you judged this mission to be extremely dangerous, Mother, I wish to be rewarded according to the amount of risk I took. What was that? Ran and Vigo spontaneously glared at Jean, whereas Rosa hid her delighted smile. The youngest was provoking his older siblings just as she had hoped for, as if he had read her mind. Brother, why are you saying you'd like to take the swords we're returning? Good. I'll allow it. Rosa interrupted Vigo's remark. Nevertheless, Ran sighed deeply before giving a piece of his own mind. If you desire to gain some top-notch swords, I can simply give you one of the weapons I own. But give up on this mission. Your achievements have spread around the world already, so you must remain alive until Father returns to the garden. If Siren returned to the Garden of Swords in 1 month and Jean wasn't present, then all the guests who came to visit the Runcandle clan would be disappointed. Thus, people would raise suspicions and say that the 5-star 15-year-old knight was a false rumor started by the Runcandles. Some would even believe that the clan tried to cover up the false rumor by saying the child had died on a mission right before the visit. Ran acted as if he were worried about this outcome, but Jean tilted his head in confusion. You're being hypocritical, elder brother Ran. If that were such an important problem you were wary of, you should have stopped elder sisters from assigning this mission to me in the first place. Ran was pretending to be generous and kind-hearted, but Jean didn't buy it. Ran and Vigo hadn't opposed Mew and when they decided to assign the Colin Ruins mission to Jean. Jean could see that Ran was blatantly acting broad-minded in order to gain their mother's approval. Ha ha ha, that must be quite humiliating, Ran. You should have stayed silent like your elder sister instead. Ran couldn't stop his ears from turning bright red as their mother laughed. I'm quite curious to know whether the youngest will be able to steal his brother's swords now. I'll be watching carefully to see whether it was just an empty provocation or whether he'll be able to make it a reality. You may all take your leave now. Once all her children left the room, Rosa propped her chin on her hand. I trampled on the other's pride so that the youngest doesn't turn out like Luna, but it seems that was unnecessary. The youngest seemed to be famished for conflict. Today it was a verbal battle and not a physical one, but he had completely dominated the flow of the conversation, overwhelming his siblings who were several years older than him. Siren will be happy to see the youngest's growth so far when he's back. Of course, such a thing wouldn't happen if Jean didn't return alive from the Colin Ruins. As soon as they exited the building, Ran and Vigo immediately returned to their rooms. Luncia hesitated to talk with the youngest for a bit, but simply returned to her room as if she couldn't be bothered to do so. Do you actually think you'll be so lucky this time around as well? Mew spoke up without even looking her brother in the eyes. She and were standing against the wall, waiting for him to come out. Who knows? Elder sisters might not know this well, but I'm actually pretty unlucky in life. This is the last time you'll ever act so easygoing. The mission isn't a solo mission. You won't be feeling so lonely on your way to your destination. Haha. Thank you for your concern, elder sisters. Well then, I shall see you another time. The two women glared at the boy's back as he strided away until he disappeared from their sights. Chapter 43. An Unexpected Incident 1. There were 3 other cadets who were assigned the Colin Ruins mission alongside Jean. Kajin Ramello, Mail Haas, and Rima Haas. All 3 were part of Mew and Anne's faction. The Haas brothers were slightly weaker than Kajin, but were still bona fide 5-star knights. Young Master, allow me to apologize for my transgression a few days ago. I will make sure not to disappoint you anymore during the upcoming mission. It is an honor to be given the chance to work alongside young Master Jean. The day before their departure, Kajin and the Haas brothers came to find Jean. Their behavior had made a full 180 compared to a few days ago. Their sarcastic remarks had completely vanished and had been replaced by courteous and submissive attitudes. Jean wore a wide smile to show his satisfaction. Indeed, the past is in the past. Let's turn the page now. I'll be in your care from here on out. Thank you very much, young master. Thank you very much. Once the 3 of them left the room, Murakan leaped onto Jin's lap. It's because they kept talking behind my back without having the courage to confront me that they were abandoned by elder sisters. Sending those 3 to the Colin Ruins is basically being sent to die. Backstabbing me during the mission must be their desperate last-ditch effort. Jean was sure of himself. Mew and Anne. Those sly foxes must have ordered their lackeys to kill Jean during the mission. He was also certain that his sisters had promised to look after their family if they successfully killed Jean and also died bravely on the battlefield. The boy had witnessed Mew and deal with people using this exact same method in his past life countless times. Meow, the cat sitting on his lap, laughed out loud. They had to use a transfer gate and travel on land to reach the Colin Ruins. The Colin Ruins originally had around a couple of thousands of natives living in villages. However, the Zipfels discovered the land several hundreds of years ago and took control of the area, so the ruins became a part of the Palon kingdom. Afterwards, most of the natives were slaughtered and the survivors were enslaved. The descendants of the natives who are still living in Colin to this day appear to be respected by the Zipfels, but they gnash their teeth at the clan of magicians. However, there was nothing the descendants could do. While they appeared respected, they were still slaves. Moreover, the rest of the world didn't really care about the lives and rights of the Colin natives. The Zipfels spared the descendants and allowed them to remain in Colin with the excuse of preserving the land in its original state. However, it was all an act where they were trying to redeem themselves from their horrible past deeds. As he thought about this sad truth, Jean frowned deeply. The weak being trampled on by the strong is a common occurrence around the world, but the Zipfels really went too far back then. Originally, the Zipfels weren't the type to commit such massacres. They normally prefer to conquer new lands peacefully and reasonably, while trying to gain the natural respect and loyalty of the conquered. The Zipfels were far more advanced in terms of their public image and relations compared to the Runcandles. In fact, ruling by force was the Runcandle style. If so, why did the Zipfels suppress the Colin natives in such a violent and cruel way back then? Jean knew the answer to this question. It was because of the mirror-like artifact the natives hid away. The Zipfels had some vague knowledge of this artifact when they discovered the island, so they trampled on the natives in order to find it. Currently, the existence of this ancient mirror was top-secret information that hadn't spread outside of the Zipfel clan. However, before Jin's regression, the entire world came to know of this mirror by the time he was 27. One brave journalist wrote an article about this ancient artifact the Zipfels had recently found. The journalist even recorded the details of the artifact's excavation site. The natives who bore a grudge against the Zipfels informed the journalist about how the clan had robbed them of their divine artifact and the history of the oppression. Later on, people started calling that mirror the Fountain of Mana. The mirror artifact, the Fountain of Mana, had a simple yet terrifying effect. It could increase your mana just by staring into it. Needless to say, there were some extreme side effects, but the artifact's value and benefits were still considerable even when taking those into account. The limit of the increase in mana using the fountain was up to 7-star. Thanks to the item, the Zipfels were able to nurture and develop countless 7-star magicians as if they were a factory. And once these mass-produced magicians made their appearance in the world, numerous aspirants aiming to become magicians joined their clan. Thus, the already powerful Zipfel clan began leaving the Runcandles behind in the dust and solidified their standing on the continent while putting pressure on their enemy clan of swordsmen. This time, I won't let those Zipfel bastards get the mirror in their hands. As one would expect, he wasn't planning on stealing the artifact while oppressing the natives like the Zipfels had done. However, for the price of suppressing the natives for several hundreds of years, he was planning on stopping the Zipfels from gaining more power using the fountain. There was no need to hurry. According to his knowledge from his past life, the Zipfels needed another 10 years or more in order to find the mirror. Thus, Jean only needed to steal it before that day came. "We will arrive soon, young master." Jin's strides came to a halt. They were walking down a mountainous road in disguises and masks. "This place is the Zipfel magicians' lodgings. This one is for independent magicians. And the relics we must find are here, in the third warehouse." Kajin spread open a map of the Colin ruins and pointed at each vital location. "Are you certain that the items are in the third warehouse?" "We must hope so. If it isn't the case, then our chances at succeeding this mission will drop to 0. There were a total of 4 relics they had to steal. 3 slabs of stones the size of their palms, and 1 bronze bowl. They were worthless items for most people, but for historians, these items were far more valuable than gold. The cadets had to sneak inside the warehouse, steal the relics, and return to the clan. Sneaking inside the warehouse wasn't such a difficult task. The third warehouse didn't contain precious artifacts, so the security was lax. In fact, the warehouse was open to visitors during the day. However, the problem was returning safely to the clan. No matter how worthless the items in the warehouse are, I'm certain there'll be several layers of protective barriers around the building. It's almost impossible to enter the warehouse without getting detected. With our current party, the Zipfel magicians weren't pushovers. If the third warehouse was attacked, they'd be dispatched and would arrive within 5 minutes. Obviously, they'd also capture and punish all intruders. Due to the rich and curious historians making a request to the clan, it seems the 4 of us may die tonight trying to complete our tasks. No matter what happens, the 3 of us will lay our lives down to protect you, young master. Kajin spoke with resolute eyes and the Haas brothers nodded with determined looks. Their acting was pitiful. As he chuckled in his mind, Jean took out some beef jerky from his pocket. Laying your lives down to protect me. That's good to hear. Have some jerky and rest for a bit. We'll commence the operation in an hour. Understood. The three cadets eagerly received the jerky. Chomp, munch, nibble, chew, gulp. As soon as he saw them swallow their food, Jean immediately spat out the jerky he was chewing on. Young master? The three of them realized that something was wrong, but it was already too late. The jerky was coated with a sleep-inducing drug that could make even a 7-star night fall asleep in a couple of seconds. Kajin and the Haas brothers were already feeling drowsy and were barely staying standing. Don't worry, it wasn't poisoned. What are you? You see can't. Thump, flop, thud. All three fell over, entering the dreamland. Jean dug a hole in the ground and pushed them inside, and proceeded to cover up the hole with leaves. They were unlikely to wake up for another 24 hours. And when they did, the mission would already be finished. You see can't, he said, as if I could keep traitors who were planning on backstabbing me by my side when entering enemy territory. In fact, had they not acted so polite, Jean would have been less suspicious of them. However, during their entire trip here, the three cadets were constantly currying favors with Jean. They were planning on having Jean let down his guard, and when the opportunity arose, they'd slice his throat with no hesitation. But Jean had seen through their utterly predictable strategy. It wasn't as if he couldn't understand and sympathize with those three. It was normal for a dog to follow its owner's orders, especially when they were facing a crisis after having made several mistakes. However, they had chosen the worst opponent. As he was living in the Runcandle clan for the second time, Jean could not be tricked by his elder sister's sloppy schemes. Moreover, I can't use magic or spiritual power while these three are watching me. Brazenly attacking the warehouse while being fully aware of the magic barrier protecting it was suicide if Jean didn't use magic or spiritual power. If the four of them tried to infiltrate the warehouse, the spell would definitely detect them. However, it was a different story if Jean sneaked in alone. Well then, shall we get going? Jean wore his mask properly and headed down the mountain road. The evening breeze blowing between the trees and branches was refreshing. The Colin ruins were shaped like an enormous ellipse. The important excavation site was located at the center, whereas the third warehouse was on the outskirts. It was now 6 p.m., and the ruins had closed. The path to the warehouse's entrance was quiet and dull. Jean lay down on the grass in the forest from where he could see the third warehouse. As he observed the area, he noticed people walking by from time to time. They were magicians dispatched here to investigate the ruins. Fortunately, Jean couldn't see anyone at the 5-star stage or above. Additionally, the guards standing by the warehouse's main and back entrances weren't magicians, just as Jean had predicted. They seemed to be 1-star or 2-star warriors at best. This didn't come as a surprise. They had no need to assign magicians, expensive and valuable manpower, just to guard a warehouse of little importance. The guards seemed bored and kept yawning as they waited for time to pass. They even joked between each other at times, laughing and chuckling. Once the magicians in the area were at a proper distance, Jean dashed towards the warehouse's main entrance. So remember that girl I met last night? Oh yeah, how far did you two go? Come on, spill the beans. Geez, should I really say it? You might punch me out of jealousy, LMAO. Oh well, so what happened is, Kurg. One mercenary fainted after taking Jin's punch to the chin. The other guard who was waiting for the rest of the story immediately thrust his spear towards the intruder. Jean swiftly turned around and avoided the spearhead, and used his momentum to jab his opponent in the throat with his elbow. The second mercenary's eyes lost their focus and flopped onto the ground. Maybe I should have waited for him to end the story before attacking them. Jean chuckled before picking up the two unconscious bodies, got them on their feet, and leaned them against the wall. By sticking the spears between their legs, they could somehow stay upright. This way, they appeared to be properly standing guard from afar. Jean rummaged through their pockets and found the keys to the warehouse door. The lock on the door was an ordinary one without any spells protecting it. That was how much the Zipfels didn't care about the third warehouse. No wonder the historians fearlessly requested the run candles to rob these relics. Kriawak, there was no way of repressing the sound of the metal door grinding open. Jean hesitated to use some noise-canceling or noise-reduction magic spells, but decided not to. If there were a magician nearby, the chances of his mana getting detected were high. Before entering the warehouse, Jean observed the interior. After a short while, he noticed a certain familiar magic circle on the floor right in front of the door. Isn't this the magic circle of blood and barrier? It was the same magic circle as the one he had seen several years ago, when he first sneaked inside the underground chambers beneath the storm castle. By dropping a few droplets of human blood on it, he could easily neutralize the effects of the circle. The defensive magic circle protecting an unimportant Zipfel warehouse was the same as the one protecting a secret chamber only the run candle flag-bearers could enter. If the public ever came to learn of this truth, the clan of swordsmen would become a laughingstock. The magic circle of blood and barrier can recognize the blood of a human, a monster, or a plague-stricken human. As long as it was someone healthy, the blood of any human was enough to neutralize it. Jean approached the unconscious yet standing mercenaries again. He then used his dagger to lightly cut the tip of one's finger and caught a few drops of blood with his palm. Afterwards, he sprinkled the blood onto the magic circle. Jean had used the mercenaries' blood in order to avoid getting caught after he accomplished his mission. If the Zipfels came to investigate the intrusion, they might believe that the magic circle had been neutralized due to the mercenaries' mistake. The first protective spell was easily dealt with. Let's search for the relics now. Suddenly, the magic circle glowed bright red and let out a sharp squeal. The flustered Jean flinched in panic, but soon calmed down and looked back at the bloodstain on his palm. The stain had been made using the unconscious mercenary's blood. In other words, it was definitely human blood. Nevertheless, the magic circle of blood and barrier had reacted to it. In other words, either the mercenary was currently afflicted by the plague, or the mercenary wasn't a human. Chapter 44. An Unexpected Incident. 2. What the foo? Jean abruptly turned around and unsheathed his dagger. The unconscious mercenaries were regaining control over their body. Their eyes are red. Moreover, the two of them were growling like beasts and breathing heavily inconsistently. It sounded almost like the breathing pattern of an orc or a troll. Jean had no time to ask himself how this had happened. The steel armors of these ex-human mercenaries were inflating. The rapidly swelling muscles on the inside were tearing the metal apart. Crack! The moment the armor tore apart, Jean reflexively cast a spell. Silent Wind! A gust of mana instantly engulfed the inside of the warehouse and formed a thin hemispherical layer. It was a 4-star spell that reduced all noises in a radius of 15 meters. Jean had decided not to use magic earlier as he didn't want to risk getting detected by the magicians in the area, but the situation had changed. He couldn't avoid fighting the mercenaries who had transformed into monsters. They were already reaching their hands out towards Jean. Their fingers had grown sharp and long claws, just like those of the Red Tiger tribe. I can only hope the magicians out there don't notice us. Cror. His two enemies were already pouncing towards him simultaneously. Jean didn't even have time to unsheath Bradamanti. The monsters were swinging their arms one after another, taking turns so that their target had no time to breathe. Swish! The claws sharply tore the air as they drew arcs. Jean narrowly dodged the attacks by crouching down and stabbed one of the monsters in the ribs with his dagger. He had aimed at the heart, but the monster had barely managed to avoid getting killed by twisting its body. However, Jean definitely felt the sensation of flesh being torn and bones breaking. Grah! The monster let out a horrible shriek. It didn't appear to be a fatal injury. The monster didn't bother removing the dagger in its torso and continued swinging its claws. Fortunately, Jean made use of this short breather to create some distance between them and unsheathed Bradamanti. As he hurriedly enveloped the blade in aura, the dark warehouse was brightened up a little. The monsters seemed to have sensed that aura was a dangerous power. As Jean adjusted the distance between them while keeping his sword straight, the black fur covering the monsters' bodies stood on end. Krrr. Croc. The wounded monster belatedly removed the dagger in its chest. Seeing what happened afterwards, Jean couldn't help but let his face show his shock. They can even regenerate? The monster's deep gash in its chest was rapidly healing and closing. The dark red blood quickly stopped gushing out after a couple of seconds. This sort of high-speed regeneration could only be seen in high-ranking and powerful monsters. However, Jin's opponents weren't your typical, naturally born monsters. These enemies were undoubtedly humans even a minute ago. With every passing second, all sorts of thoughts and hypotheses passed through Jin's mind. However, he didn't have the necessary knowledge to understand exactly how this mysterious and freaky incident had happened. He had never seen anything like this in his total 43 years of life. Fortunately, while he couldn't understand how it had happened, Jean could somewhat grasp the fundamentals behind it, thanks to his life as a magician in his past life. It's highly likely these are living golems created through forbidden magic. Those zipful bastards. Are they using the Colin ruins as an experimental facility for forbidden magic? Swoosh! The monsters resumed their flurry of attacks. Jean could only narrowly evade the attacks earlier as he was taken by surprise, but now that he had regained his calm, his enemies' movements appeared clumsy. They had the strength and speed of low-leveled 4-star fighters. However, there was a vast difference between a trained 4-star knight and monsters that only had 4-star physical abilities. Jean easily parried and dodged the monsters' claws and counterattacked. It's not too difficult facing them. Whenever Jean made a feint or moved irregularly, the monsters fell for it each time. He could see their feet getting tangled up, resulting in the monsters losing their balance. There are 3 places the core could be located: the heart, head, or lower abdomen. When it comes to these magical weapons called golems, they never stop moving no matter how much they get wrecked. In fact, Jean had sliced one of the monster's wrist and shoulder, yet there was no change in its behavior. On the other hand, if their cores get destroyed, it's over for them. This was the case even for these living golems that were made with forbidden magic. Stab! Jean backstepped and changed his attack pattern, easily piercing one in the head. The aura surrounding his sword was spinning rapidly, so there was a large hole the size of a fist in the monster's head. So it's not the head. Had Jean fought like he was facing humans, he would have been in a predicament just now. After inflicting a deadly blow to one of the enemies, most fighters would have shifted their focus on the remaining foe. However, the golem with a hole in its head continued swiping its claws. Its speed and power hadn't been affected a single bit. Rather, it became more violent and aggressive. Jean spun around to dodge the attacks and thrust his sword again, this time in the lower abdomen. But this time, he raised his arm with the blade until he reached the heart. This sort of attack would have been nigh impossible for ordinary people. It was at times like this when Jean was grateful for his Runcandle bloodline for giving him a blessed body with superhuman strength. Skryak! The disgusting sound of the monster's flesh ripping apart and its rib cage shattering echoed. Once he retracted his blade, Jean realized that the core was located at the heart. Instead of an actual beating heart, there was a ball of blue mana at the center of the chest. However, it was a completely different-looking core than what Jean was familiar with. Instead of mana, it almost looked like a big glass marble filled with some blue liquid. Moreover, it was incomparably harder than what a normal human's heart was supposed to be. Through the recoil Jean felt when cutting the core apart, he realized that he had barely managed to break it despite the 5-star aura covering his sword. PFFFCHT. The solid-looking ball of mana burst and a terrible stench spread in the air. The dead monster was now slowly transforming back into a human. It couldn't turn back into its previous form perfectly, as the swollen skin and ripped muscles were irreversible. Nevertheless, the shriveled-up corpse on the ground was undoubtedly that of a human. As soon as he saw that, a complicated sentiment grew within Jean, and rage suddenly began boiling in his heart. How dare they do something like this to a fellow human being? rage towards the Zipfels. The remaining monster pounced on Jean as if in response to the boy's anger. Jean had yet to fix his posture after finishing off the first foe. Scree! Its claws slammed and scratched against Bradamanti, creating an unpleasant sound. Jean placed his right foot back and pushed with all his strength to stand his ground. His foe's claws weren't as tough as Bradamanti's blade. While it seemed stronger than ordinary steel, it couldn't compare to the blade of a powerful, ancient sword from thousands of years ago. Crack! As the two opponents clashed, 5 claws broke away, disrupting the power balance. The monster lost its footing and fell face-first to the floor. Jean stamped on the back of its head and stabbed it in the heart from above. He felt the solid ball of mana break at the tip of his sword. The fallen monster's body trembled, and soon enough, it returned to its human form as well. Phew! Only then could Jean finally sigh and relax. He looked at his surroundings and saw that the floor was drenched in the monster's dark red blood. The silent wind spell he had cast earlier was still present. Fortunately, it seemed the magicians in the area hadn't sensed the usage of magic. Keiki! Jean suddenly heard a voice. Came from the fallen monster. No, from the human writhing on the floor. Killed me! He hurriedly crouched down and examined the second victim. Surprisingly, he was still breathing. Barely, but breathing. However, he still had a somewhat inhuman appearance. It was obvious their entire bodies had swollen and torn beyond their limits. Jean soon came to the conclusion that he couldn't be saved. He had countless questions to ask. How and why had they become living golems? Who was behind this? How they had become the Zipfel's experimental subjects? However, the mercenary had no strength left to speak. All Jean could do was liberate him from the pain and agony. Stab! Jean pierced the man in his disturbingly skinny neck, and the victim closed his eyes peacefully. Jean also closed his eyes for a moment and lifted his head. He did not know of their circumstances, but no human in the world wished to become a living golem willingly, especially if they were made to transform into monsters and were treated as expendables. A flame burned in Jin's eyes as he ground his teeth. But this wasn't the moment to lose his cool. An unexpected incident had occurred, through which Jean witnessed the horrible acts committed by the Zipfels behind the scenes. And now, Jean was suspicious of his elder sisters, wondering if they were aware of this truth when sending him on this mission. However, he still had a task to complete. He couldn't just go back home and tell his siblings, "I couldn't finish the mission because a monster attacked me." Otherwise, his entire clan would mock him. And even if the Run Candles decided to bear the disgrace and publicize the details of this mission, about the horrible experiments being secretly performed in the Zipfel clan, nothing would change. The Run Candles could demand the Vermont Empire to perform an official investigation of the Zipfels, but the clan of magicians would never admit to having used forbidden magic. Creating living golems was a terrible crime. Simply finding signs of living golems was more than enough to pressure the Empire to do a formal investigation. However, the Zipfels could just feign innocence even if conclusive evidence were to be found. In that case, no one would be able to hold them responsible for this crime. That was how much power and authority the Zipfels wielded. First, I should take some broken shards of the ball of mana and quickly finish my mission. After a while, Jean regained his composure and picked up a few pieces of the lump of mana. He then walked to the warehouse entrance and checked the situation outside. The magicians aren't making any moves. In other words, most of the magicians here don't know of these living golems and were just told that the warehouse was just an ordinary one. If the magicians knew that living golems were placed as guards outside this building, the security here wouldn't be so lax. There would be at least 27-star magicians constantly keeping an eye on this place. In other words, not every personnel stationed at the Colin ruins were involved with the use of forbidden magic in the clan. I just need to steal the relics and escape as originally planned. Jean carefully dispelled the silent wind spell he had cast and searched around the warehouse. Finding 3 slabs of stone was a piece of cake. They were all stored away on the first floor of the warehouse. He also found the bronze bowl very quickly. TL/N. Final reminder to people living in countries where you have a ground floor. Korea. calls the lowest floor the first floor like the USA. Keep it in mind when you see another X floor in the future in this novel. However, unlike the slabs of stone, the bronze bowl was protected by a complex spell. It was set to activate when the bowl was removed from its display case. This entire protective spell was the reason why the mission's difficulty was so high. The standard procedure would be to spend several hours trying to dispel the magic like untying a string knot. But, Jean sheathed his sword and gathered mana in both his hands. I'll steal it using a more extreme method. Since there are already 2 living golems lying here as corpses, no matter what crazy thing I do in this building today. Whoosh! The mana in his hands gained a fire attribute. But Jean then infused the mana with spiritual energy. The flame mixed with darkness projected large shadows in the room. The Zipfuls will have no choice but to sweep it under the rug. The ancient relics he had to steal were merely stone slabs and 1 bronze bowl. Even if those were stolen, the Zipfuls had nothing to worry about. Nevertheless, the Zipfuls would normally do their utmost when trying to find the culprit as the clan's dignity was on the line. However, the situation was different if you added living golems created with forbidden magic into the equation. They would have to conceal the incident and let no rumors spread at all costs. Flame explosion. Therefore, causing a commotion would actually benefit Jean when escaping. He planned on lighting a fire that engulfed the entire building and escaping while hiding his body inside the flames. Whoosh! The burning balls of mana in his hands floated in the air. They glowed bright scarlet as spiritual energy had amplified them. Once the preparations were done, the 2 balls of mana exploded. Boom! The inside of the warehouse was engulfed in flames in mere instants, and the ceiling collapsed due to the explosion. Keying. The protection spells cast on all the items and relics display cases activated simultaneously. The shrilling noises resounded everywhere in the warehouse. However, Jean ignored the spells and simply grabbed the bronze bowl and quickly left the front door. The Zipfuls were probably going to disguise this incident as an accidental fire outbreak. Chapter 45. An Unexpected Incident 3. Just what on earth do you 2 think you're doing? Thwack! Thwack! Luna aggressively slapped 2 women. The strength of a 9-star knight was nothing to scoff at, even if it were a simple slap. The 2 victims let out short groans which were barely audible due to the loud smack. In fact, they were sent back flying from the overwhelming force. Boom! The 2 women slammed into the wall behind them and trembled. They were Mew and Anne. The instant they got slapped, they protected their bodies with aura. However, the shock was so strong that they couldn't avoid coughing up blood. You sent him to Zipful territory? Mew, he's 10 years younger than you. Have you lost your mind? Luna had just returned to the Garden of Swords after leaving to deal with some personal issues. As soon as she arrived home, she summoned her 2 little sisters who had assigned Jean his most recent mission. The girls couldn't even look their sister in the eyes. Luna wasn't just their eldest sibling to them. She was an existence they feared more than their father at times. Get up! The sisters stood up. With unsteady steps. These 2 were also Luna's youngest siblings like Jean, her own flesh and blood. Seeing their lowered gazes and trembling, Luna pitied them a little, but she had decided to give them a stern warning today no matter what. Why did you do it? Mew and didn't answer for a while and kept their heads down. It wasn't because they had nothing to say. They were feeling bitter towards their eldest sister because she already knew the answer to that question. That it was because of the traditional familial conflict, the battle for hegemony, where children fought between each other for a higher standing in the clan. Elder sister Luna, are you seriously asking that question because you don't know the answer? Mew spoke up with difficulty, to which Luna snickered. So what if I really didn't know the answer? You're not saying that a flag-bearer of the clan is now waging war against their youngest brother, who's still in the intermediate class, are you? The 2 sisters couldn't say anything in return and trembled. They felt embarrassed. While the battle for hegemony was a long-lasting tradition in the Runcandle clan, a flag-bearer confronting a yet-to-be flag-bearer was complete mismatch. Flag-bearers fighting other flag-bearers, and cadets fighting other cadets. That was the unwritten rule of the battle for hegemony in the Runcandle clan. While the children didn't have to follow the rule at all times, Mew and N had taken it one step too far with their recent actions. Luna looked down at her siblings for a moment before opening her mouth. Before one could react, her look of disdain had changed into that of murderous intent. Learn to be ashamed. The fact that you two are flag-bearers of this clan is a disgrace. It's humiliating for me. Elder sister. The younger sisters raised their voices at the same time. However, Luna paid no heed to that and smirked. What? Do you think I'm exaggerating? Is it unpleasant getting mocked by me? Did I hurt your pride as flag-bearers? You've never gotten involved in the conflicts of the clan, so what right do you have to say all tea? Had you confronted the youngest and won, I wouldn't have gone this far. What do you mean? Mew and Anne's eyes widened. You've already lost against him. The youngest returned from the Colin ruins after completing his mission. Jean arrived not long ago and went to report to Mother. I ran into him on my way home and verified his success with my own 2 eyes. The 2 girls bit down on their lips. Do you understand why I told you to be ashamed now? You 2 ended up attaching wings on the youngest's back while trying to trample on him. I wonder whether there's ever been any flag-bearer in history who lost this miserably after confronting their youngest sibling. Luna continued talking sarcastically, and her younger sister's ears turned bright red. On one hand, they couldn't handle this humiliation. On the other, they were also terrified. Mew and N wouldn't be able to lay a finger on Jean for a while. Their plan of destroying the youngest before he could fully develop had gone up in flames. The sisters weren't confident that they'd be able to defeat Jean after he fully matured. In a few years, the youngest would start getting his revenge against them. As they feared the future, a freezing chill ran down their spines. They could only stare into the emptiness in stupefaction as they turned around to exit Luna's room. Luna spoke up, one final time before they could leave. From what I've observed so far, the youngest isn't a merciful child. You 2 should be careful from here on out. Do you still have more mockery left to throw at us, elder sister? Luna wore a bitter smile on her face. No, I'm saying this because I'm truly concerned for you. Our relationship may have gone astray sometime in the past, but you 2 are still my little sisters. Mew and N left without saying anything. Luna stared at the door for a while after their exit and sighed deeply. Clack. As she sat back down at her desk, a teacup was placed in front of her. Taemyun, her nanny who was waiting in the room next door, had returned to Luna's room. Ah, thanks, nanny. Ho ho. I thought that you had relapsed into your period of adolescence when you came home and immediately pummeled your siblings, milady. Adolescence? At my age? As if... It's because your teenage years were quite memorable. Sigh. Still, I'm worried about ladies Mew and Anne. Considering the 13th young master's personality, I'm sure he won't forget what happened even in the distant future. Do you also think that they won't be able to compete with Jean, Nanny? I believe that in another 5 years, they won't be able to rival young Master Jean even in a formal duel. Considering that, ladies Mew and N have less than 5 years left to live. Don't talk about such gruesome things. They're still our flesh and blood. If the youngest kills them once he's older, it gives me shivers just thinking of it. Speaking of which, have you looked into what we were talking about last time, Nanny? By what we were talking about last time, Luna meant the incident when someone attempted to assassinate Jean in the Storm Castle. She had asked her nanny to look into their other siblings to find out who was the culprit behind the attempt. Technically speaking, it was a curse instead of an assassination attempt, but Luna didn't know about that. Moreover, she had misunderstood the situation. When Jean brought it up, she believed that he was around 5 or 6 years old. However, he was actually a 1-year-old baby when someone had attempted to cast the bladed illusion curse on him. This was because Jean hadn't mentioned that he still remembered everything. From back when he was an infant. Yes, first of all, the culprits aren't ladies Mew and N whom you pummeled earlier. Back then, they were still in the intermediate class, so it wasn't difficult to dig up information about them. That makes sense. I'm pretty certain it's not Mary or Yona either. Same with the Tana twins. Then the remaining suspects are young masters Joshua, Deepoo's, Ran, Vigo, and Lady Luncia. Except for young masters Ran and Vigo, I cannot carelessly investigate the others. Right? Joshua, Deepoo's, and Luncia's standings are already established and stable. Things can get troublesome if we investigate them recklessly. Then should I begin with young masters Ran and Vigo for now? Luna pondered for a moment and tapped on the table with her finger. No, let's just keep an eye on everyone for now. If we keep poking our heads in everyone's affairs, you might get in danger, Nanny. A wise decision. Although there was an assassination attempt back in the Storm Castle, young Master Jean is growing properly, so I believe there is no need to worry too much now. No matter who the culprit is, they must know that I'm looking. After Jean now, they won't make a move carelessly anymore. Anyways, thank you for your help so far, Nanny. It was my pleasure. Should I prepare your meal now? Yeah, some alcohol as well. The usual. Rosa had myriads of questions she wanted to ask her youngest son when he returned after accomplishing his mission. However, she didn't express them out loud. Mummet and the Colin ruins. Everyone had expected him to fail, but each time he returned triumphant and proud. Was he blessed by the heavens? Or did he receive the help of a third party each time? Nobody knew the answer. But with this mission, Rosa was certain that it was the latter. There's an exceptional expert supporting the youngest from the shadows, and the youngest is using that to his advantage to complete his missions. Accomplishing one's missions with the help of another went against the unwritten rule of the clan. The only help one could ask for during a difficult mission was reinforcements from the clan. However, Rosa decided not to question her son nor to blame him. Soon, countless influential envoys from all around the world would come visit the Garden of Swords just to have a look at the youngest. Siren would host a banquet, and the star of the show would be Jean. Even if he had gotten the help of a third party from outside the clan without informing them, the most important fact was that he had returned alive from the mission. Rosa could always reprimand her son on a later date at an appropriate moment after having gathered enough evidence. Good work. No need to go report to the flag bearers. Go take a good rest for today. I'll inform them about your return. Thank you very much, Mother. As soon as he exited the main building where Rosa's office was located, Jean sensed gazes on him. Cadets showed admiration in their eyes. Guardian Knights wore looks of astonishment, whereas flag bearers had looks of contempt and disgust. Mother and my siblings must think I received the help of someone else to complete my missions. Well, that wasn't his problem. Jean didn't plan on resolving this misunderstanding for now. Everything would be uncovered in the future when he reveals his true powers and declares himself a magic swordsman who had contracted with Soderette. As soon as Jean entered his room, Gilly ran up to him and hugged him tightly. When he felt her tears on his cheek, Jean realized how worried Gilly had been for him. I'm all right, Gilly. I'm strong now. I might even win against you in a duel in the near future if I went all out. If something terrible had happened to you, I would have done everything to get revenge on the ladies at the expense of my own life, young master. Geez, don't talk about such scary things, Strawberry Pie. You're too hot-blooded. Isn't it good now that he's back with us safe and sound? Give me a minute, Gilly. Muraken, take a look at this. Jean took out the glass bottle in which he had put the shards of the living golem's core. It's the heart of a living golem. You were lucky, kid. Seeing how you're unscathed, this one must have been a failure. Did you find it at the Colin ruins? The two guards positioned outside the warehouse suddenly transformed into monsters and attacked me. They regenerated no matter where I cut them. But I managed to kill them by destroying the cores in their chests. As Jean explained the situation, Gilly's face turned pale. Muraken calmly explained what forbidden magic and living golems were to her. Last time it was a cemetery giant, and now it's a living golem? Those zipful bastards are getting on my nerves. What on earth were they scheming? Muraken shook his head and spoke to the other two. In any case, this must be the Zipful's handiwork, as you said, since the Colin ruins are in Zipful territory. That's right. You and I need to make some time and visit that area again in the future. I need to go take a look and ask them what they're scheming personally. Jean was somewhat nervous about having to return to the ruins due to the living golems, but since Murakan was going with him, it would be a much safer trip than his recent mission. And if we're lucky enough, we could even try searching for the mirror, the fountain of mana. Even if we wreak havoc, the Zipfels will have no choice but to sweep it under the rug due to their usage of forbidden magic. Jean nodded to the dragon. Translator's Corner. That's it for this week. Comes out on Wednesday. It's the beginning of the banquet arc. Maybe my favorite arc so far. Chapter 46. Banquet 1. Translokoko, Tor, Euchariter, Proof. 3 weeks have passed since Jean returned to the clan. He had left Kajin and the Haas brothers down in the hole on the mountainous road on his way back. Fortunately, the 3 of them woke up the next day and returned safely to the Garden of Swords afterwards. However, this time around, Mew and An abandoned them for good and cast them aside. In fact, it wasn't just those 3, but all the members of their faction within the intermediate class. Additionally, Kajin and the Haas brothers were stripped of their titles and qualifications as Runcandle cadets. These appeared to be extreme punishments to others, especially considering those 3 had, officially speaking, accomplished the mission at the Kalin ruins with Jean. However, all the other cadets knew of the truth. Kajin and the Haas brothers were being banished from the Runcandle clan due to their mistake. The mistake of joining the wrong faction. You must find me foolish and laughable. Before leaving the Garden of Swords, Kajin shouted to the intermediate cadets. He looked around the crowd, but then stopped his gaze on the leader of the youngest division, Mesa Milcano. But soon enough, you all will be in the same situation as me. We're different from purebloods. No matter how much effort we put into the clan, we're mere mutts being bred by the Runcandles, and in the end you get cast aside like trash. Kakik. I wish you all the best. Nevertheless, not a single cadet shared sympathy towards Kajin Ramello. No one had forgotten his tyrannical rule and terrible deeds from back when he was the intermediate class's dictator. Whatever, you retarded dog. Mesa snorted and waved her hand towards Kajin, shooing him away as if he were a street dog. Clang, clang. Every time Jean swung down on the clear stone, a beautiful sound resonated inside the hidden training area. That's enough. Your training with the clear stones ends today. Tomorrow onwards, the Tana twins will be the only ones who have to attend. Although he spoke with a composed tone, Zed was actually having a difficult time hiding his shock. Jean was the first Runcandle child he had trained to complete the clear stone training within half a year. Moreover, he perfectly completed the mission at the Kalin ruins. Whether he's been blessed with great fortune since his mission at Mummet, or whether he's accomplished his tasks with his own capabilities, I guess we'll never know. But whatever the answer is, my elder brother won't leave him to stagnate amongst the cadets here on out. Zed was somewhat suspicious of the incidents that had occurred every time Jean was dispatched on a mission. There was the magician's terror attack at Mummet, and now there was a fire at the Kalin ruins. However, he didn't find it to be particularly problematic. He didn't care how Jean had accomplished the missions. What mattered most was that he had skillfully and neatly completed all his tasks using whatever method he had planned in advance. After Jean escaped from the Kalin ruins, the Zipfels reported the incident as an accidental fire at the warehouse, just as he had predicted. There was neither a single bit of information about the robbery of ancient relics nor about the living golems and usage of forbidden magic. Jean didn't inform the clan about the Zipfels' illegal experiments, though. Jean. Yes, uncle. You won't need to attend the morning classes with the cadets anymore either. Next week, the Patriarch will make you take an oath. The Tana twins' ears perked up. Although they were usually dense and dull-witted, they could still understand what Zed was implying with his words. Will Father grant the position of provisional flag-bearer to Jean? Already, the minimum qualification necessary to become a Runcandle flag-bearer was being a 6-star knight. Jean was still at 5-star, so he didn't meet the requirements. However, his age was a game-changer. He was a 5-star knight at such a young age that he had caught Siren's attention. But that young age was the entire reason why he was at the bottom of the hierarchy in the family, so his youth had its merits and demerits. Do you understand what I mean? No matter what the Patriarch demands of you, I believe that you will be successful henceforth. Since Zed was going as far as saying so, it was almost certain that Jean would become a provisional flag bearer. The Run Candle's provisional flag bearers were given one command: to accumulate achievements and gain honor. It was a trial. Honor wasn't something one could suddenly obtain one day. Therefore, provisional flag bearers often left the clan for a long period of time and ventured out into the world on their own. Jean was a super rookie amongst the cadets, but no one outside the clan would recognize him. Someone like Mary Runcandle, Jin's third sister, had to leave to the south and earn the nicknames the Southern Region's Madwoman and Stormwind Mary in order to become a fully fledged flag bearer. Thus, one had to gain reputation about their battle prowess and have everyone recognize their glory to become a true flag bearer. Needless to say, the provisional flag bearers weren't allowed to get any help or support from the clan during this entire trial. Yes, uncle. Thank you very much. For once, Jean didn't hide his emotions and expressed his joy. So far, his life at the Storm Castle and the Garden of Swords was filled with restrictions. He could only train his swordsmanship openly and not his magic or spiritual power. The other two had to be practiced in secret, away from the public's eyes as if he were a criminal. However, if he gained the opportunity to spend a long period of time outside the Runcandle clan, I can train my powers as much as I want, without having to be wary of others. Obviously speaking, he would have to return to the Garden of Swords after having gained great fame and hide his abilities again. But there was no need to complain, as he would finally gain the proper authority and power of a true flag bearer. Because when that day arrives, he would create an enormous fissure in the succession, where the positions and standings of the candidates for the throne would be flipped around. Translococo, Tor, Euchariter, Proof, June 1795. The atmosphere at the Garden of Swords was greatly tense and agitated. All kinds of renowned celebrities and envoys were about to visit the Runcandle clan to see the youngest child, so everything had to be prepared carefully and be absolutely perfect. Moreover, the world's one and only Genesis Knight, their patriarch, was returning to the main house. Siren was on his way to the Garden of Swords. Not only was it an official visit, he was organizing a large banquet with all the guests. Currently, there were over 500 Guardian Knights escorting Siren from the Black Sea as a formality. Siren had departed the Black Sea 2 weeks ago. While he could have used transfer gates to arrive faster, he insisted on walking his way back home. Traveling from the Black Sea to the main house on foot and by sea would take them at least 2 weeks to arrive. During the entire 2 weeks, the 500-plus Guardian Knights would be traveling alongside the Patriarch, so the necessary expenses were astronomical. Moreover, since over 500 Guardian Knights had emptied their positions at the main house, the others had to fill in the empty spots and work a lot harder than usual. Nevertheless, Siren insisted on traveling by foot in order to show the entire world the Runcandle's dignity. During the past 2 weeks, the outside world was constantly talking about how Siren was doing a magnificent parade across the continent to return home. Whenever Siren and the Guardian Knights marched through cities and towns, the inhabitants stood on the side to watch the incredible spectacle and bowed when the Genesis Knight passed in front of them. Lord Patriarch, we will be arriving at the Garden of Swords in 2 hours. My youngest child seems to enjoy constantly disturbing my training. I was planning on staying at the Black Sea for at least 10 years. How many times have I left the Black Sea to return to the clan just because of him? Although he appeared to be irritated, Siren had a soft grin on his face. I noticed that young Master Jean was out of the ordinary since his days at the Storm Castle. But, to be honest, I never thought he'd be this outstanding. His behavior and achievements at the Garden of Swords are really astonishing. His fighting spirit and audacity are quite exceptional. That little kid's gaze has always shown great ambition and drive ever since I went to visit the Storm Castle. He thinks he kept it properly hidden and that I hadn't noticed it though. Haha. Jean Runcandle, his 13th child. Even Siren could see that his youngest son was greatly different compared to his other children. It wasn't just a question of being able to use a bit of spiritual power due to having gained Soderet's interest. Siren had been keeping an eye on Jean because of the fighting spirit and resolve he had seen in the boy's eyes many years ago. Although no one had specifically taught him, the youngest already knew how to properly destroy and tear someone down back then. Even if one assumed that he was able to defeat and oppress the Tana twins back at the Storm Castle thanks to his spiritual power, Siren was still unable to forget Jin's silhouette as he provoked his other siblings as soon as he had arrived at the Garden of Swords. I already have plenty of children who are eloquent and have a way with words. I wasn't very surprised when the youngest came to the garden and immediately provoked the others, but I still had some interest in him. And look at how far he's come now. He's returned alive every time his siblings sent him out to die and even became a 5-star knight. I'm still more amazed by the results of his very first mission, the one you assigned to him, Lord Patriarch, rather than his achievements at Mummet and the Kalin ruins. While Mesa Milkano getting kidnapped was outside our expectations, we could never have imagined the young master would fight and kill the White Wolf warrior. It was quite an odd incident. I was hoping the youngest would use his companions as meat shields in order to kill the White Wolf warrior. Never in my wildest dreams did I think he'd defeat the warrior on his own. He even rescued the kidnapped cadet. It seems he proved to us the weight of his principles and beliefs. As he reminisced about the past, Siren nodded to himself in satisfaction. Do you truly believe that the young master defeated the White Wolf warrior on his own? I do. Oh, technically speaking, I guess it's not quite on his own. In any case, he's quite the interesting brat. I'll ask him some questions about that incident when I see him this time. Siren was thinking that Jean had used spiritual power to kill the White Wolf warrior. The parade reached the Garden of Swords at noon. The Guardian Knights who were at the Garden of Swords had already finished lining up at the gate 3 hours before Siren's arrival. The knights wearing shining armors all raised their swords in synchronization. All hail! All hail! Siren stood silently and stared at everyone, and nodded in satisfaction after a while. Immediately, all the swords returned to their original positions, by the knights' sides. Soon enough, Rosa and the clan's flag-bearers appeared from behind the Guardian Knights. The pure-blooded run candles who had yet to become flag-bearers were standing behind them. Jean was the youngest run candle pureblood, even when including all his cousins, thus he was standing at the very back. We've been expecting you, Lord Patriarch. Rosa. It must have been quite exhausting preparing all this. Not at all. Our reliable children were the ones who arranged this, so I had nothing to do with it. As she replied, Rosa's gaze discreetly moved towards Joshua. She truly believed that the infighting and competition amongst the run candles was the virtue of the clan. Moreover, she had recently started to hold great expectations towards her youngest child, who had started showing his prominence and potential. Nevertheless, she still hoped for Joshua to become the next patriarch. The expectations she had towards her second daughter Luncia, second son Deepuz, third daughter Mary, and youngest son Jean were all as candidates for the throne after Joshua. Siren could clearly read Rosa's intentions, but didn't react to them. However, there was one thing he found unpleasant: the imposing and confident expression on his eldest son's face. Ever since Luna renounced her right for the throne, Joshua was convinced he'd become the next patriarch. He considered this battle for hegemony a walk in the park and believed the throne was guaranteed to be his. Siren actually thought that his second son Deepuz or third daughter Mary were more suited for the throne, despite the fact that they weren't perfectly satisfactory either. If our children were truly so reliable, I wouldn't have needed to leave the Black Sea. The guests visiting today are only coming here to stay on my good side, not out of fear of our children. Siren put emphasis on the word children. You are indeed correct. Let us head inside. I've personally prepared your favorite dishes for the first time in a while. Now that must have been quite strenuous. I have great expectations for today's lunch. Siren walked past Joshua and didn't even glance at his eldest son. Strictly speaking, he didn't glance at his other children either as he continued walking. However, it must have felt like a humiliation to Joshua as they were standing before the entire clan. Siren continued making his way but came to a halt just a single time and spoke out loud. Ran Vigo. Yes, father. Did you gift your swords to the youngest? The swords I gave you special permission to take from the clan's armory. Siren finally turned his gaze and stared at the two swords hanging by Jin's waist. It was a somewhat reprimanding tone. Siren was implying his dissatisfaction at his sons for giving away the precious swords he had lent them without his permission, and that they shouldn't expect to be allowed to borrow any other item from the clan in the future. Ran and Vigo were about to lose their minds. If they had indeed gifted those swords, they could somehow appease their father's anger in the future. But if they told him they had lost the weapons to the youngest, they were doomed. Yet that was their only choice. They could only answer honestly. The youngest took them away from us. What? Are you telling me you two lost against the youngest? Ah, that's not the case. We promised to give them to the youngest if he accomplished his mission at the Colin ruins, so... Ran and Vigo wanted to dig a hole on the spot and hide. The humiliation was horrible, and they couldn't bear the thought of their father being disappointed and losing all interest in them. Wahahaha. However, Siren simply laughed out loud and patted his sons on the shoulder. I see. Then next time, make sure you get the swords back from him. The youngest is always so shrewd. I sometimes wonder whether it really comes from my blood. Ha. Ran and Vigo sighed in relief. Not only had they avoided their father's fury, he had also cracked a joke, which washed away all their worries. However, they didn't know one important fact. When Siren said, I sometimes wonder whether it really comes from my blood, he wasn't talking about Jin's shrewdness. He was talking about Ran and Vigo's uselessness. Proofreader's Corner. PFFFFFHHHHA. What a great way to end a chapter. Imagine your parents calling you useless. Wait, that hits too close to home. Well, hope you guys enjoyed this chapter. Can't wait to see how the banquet will go. Will someone attempt to do something to Jean? Are the Runcandle siblings going to pull something? Will Murakans suddenly barge in? Tune in next time. But before that, Joshua was convinced he'd become the next patriarch. PFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFT. Just look at this dude. Who's gonna tell him? Chapter 47. Banquet 2. Since the master of the clan had arrived, the guests began entering the Garden of Swords. There were delegates from every nation, including the Vermont Empire, the Imperial Guard, Special Forces, Dragon King Knights, the Ivliano clan, the Tuco clan, the Ken clan, the Black King Mercenaries, the Ghost Mercenaries, etc. Each and every one of them were people with great power from highly influential clans or organizations. As they entered the garden one after another, it appeared as if the garden's mansion stood with pride, looming over them like a monarch on the throne. It was like the building was commanding the guests to show the minimum courtesy and manners when in its presence. Additionally, there were the several thousands of swords planted in the ground around the Garden of Swords, and the myriads of highly important visitors walked through this metal forest. It was a majestic sight. In fact, the Vermont Emperor's coronation ceremony wasn't as luxurious or radiant as this spectacle. The 1,000 guests who had come to the clan today represented the Runcandle's prestige, authority, and power. The guardian knights and servants of the clan were intoxicated with this feeling of importance. As they all stood with imposing expressions, they had to show that the Runcandle clan's guardian knights and servants weren't ordinary people either, that they shared the glory of the clan as well. Except the Zipfuls, there wasn't a single other clan that could rival the Runcandles. And since the Zipfuls hadn't sent an official request to visit the clan today, the Runcandle clansmen could stand straight with their chests puffed out without fearing anything. Meanwhile, Jean was witnessing this incredible sight alongside Siren. They stood on the balcony looking down at the courtyard. Siren waved his hand towards the guests from time to time, while Jean lowered his head in courtesy. This must be your first banquet. Yes, father. Jean had actually attended a few banquets in his past life thanks to his magic teacher, but this was his first time taking part in a banquet hosted by the Runcandles, even if he took his past life into account. Back then, whenever the clan organized a banquet, he wasn't allowed to attend and had to keep himself out of sight like a criminal. A pure-blooded Runcandle becoming a one-star knight at the age of 25 was an embodiment of the clan's disgrace. But now, I'm standing next to father during the banquet as one of the main stars of the night. To think I'd finally reached this place after dying once. Jean felt proud yet bitter at the same time. In fact, if you took a deeper look into his emotions, The bitterness overwhelmed the feeling of pride and joy. However, Jean didn't express his feelings and simply waited for his father's next words. As you may know, our clan seldom hosts banquets. Yes, we only organize one when there's something truly worth celebrating. In other words, the feats you've achieved so far are that impressive. Thank you very much, father. Siren softly stroked Jean on the head. Jean was initially scared out of his wits, but managed to keep his shock hidden. How many guests do you think there are today? My rough estimate would be 1,000, father. Right, I received a report that it was about 1,000. There are around 200 more guests today compared to the banquet we organized 7 years ago. Do you understand what that signifies? Jean didn't need to think about the answer. It means that during the past 7 years, our clan's authority and power has increased. Siren had a satisfied smile. Exactly. Other clans could easily have 1,000 guests come to their banquet as well, but all the visitors today are prominent and distinguished figures. We don't let small fry or worthless people attend our banquets. Jean nodded to his father's words. Just as Siren had said, the 1,000 guests today were all stars and celebrities. They were the leaders standing at the steering wheel of the world, ruling over the billions of people inhabiting this continent. But even amongst all these rulers, the one standing at the summit was Siren Runcandle. All I've done during the past 7 years was killing monsters in the Black Sea and training in seclusion. Yet, our clan's prestige has increased over the years, and the only reason behind it is that I'm the only Genesis Knight of this era. Jean politely waited for Siren to continue his speech. In other words, once I disappear, most of the people gathered here today may turn their backs on the Runcandle clan. Jean was aware of this truth better than anyone else. Without his father, Siren Runcandle, the clan would never have been able to amass so much power and influence. The Runcandles were one of the 2 major clans on this continent alongside the Zipfels. But if Siren were to be taken out of the equation, the gap in power and military strength between the Zipfels and the Runcandles would only grow larger and larger. Thus, the world would head towards a system where the Zipfels held total power over the continent. The Vermont Empire, which was currently acting as the mediator between the 2 clans, would most definitely side with the clan of magicians if things took such a drastic turn. I wonder what the youngest has to say about this. Siren has had this conversation with all his children so far. He had asked them similar questions along the lines of, if I disappear, people will turn their backs on the Runcandles. What do you think of this? Most of the time, his children gave similar answers, such as, that won't happen, father. Or why would you ever disappear, father? Some of them would even foolishly declare that they'd become the next Genesis Knight. Father. After a long silence, Jean called out to his father. Speak freely, son. If you were to disappear one day, and all these guests truly turned their backs on the Runcandles, and in consequence, the Zipfels mobilized all their forces to suppress us, and the clan were to be at the point of no return. Jean paused for a moment and made eye contact with Siren. I would leave the clan. Having heard the answer, Siren glared at Jean with bloodshot eyes. What? Did you say you'd leave the clan? Yes. If the Runcandle clan were to collapse just because you aren't present, father, then it would be due to the succeeding clan leader's incompetence. I do not plan on dying a dog's death under an incompetent patriarch or matriarch. It was a shocking and absurd answer. Siren was angered by the youngest's insolent attitude for a short while, but it was soon replaced with great curiosity. Keep talking. Jean let out a deep breath before continuing his words. How many of those guests' weaknesses do we, as a clan, have in our grasp? Weaknesses. Yes. Allow me to take Duke Byrne over there as an example. The Byrne clan's head tricked the Emperor and embezzled some of the Empire's treasures. Nevertheless, he's confidently attending our banquet, all thanks to our help and the debt he owes us. There is also the man smoking towards the left of the courtyard. He is Lance Cleaver. Am I correct? It's a bit difficult to recognize people just from the portraits I've seen before. In any case, Lance, the Cleaver clan's greatest warrior, once requested us to kill 3 Zipfel magicians for him. Over there is Miss Charlotte Harold, who once sold her family's heirloom due to her terrible gambling addiction. She then requested us to recover it for her, and the Herald clan has yet to repay us that debt in full to this day. And the woman behind Miss Charlotte is Lord Bellard's mistress. She was originally an illegitimate daughter of the Vermont imperial family. But due to her talent as a genius magician, she was oppressed by the legitimate children and was later banished. Lord Bellard has been commissioning us to protect her for several years already. And the person over at the... Enough. Siren lightly shook his hand. It seems you've read through the clan's commission contracts. But that's normally only allowed to flag bearers. Did Luna show them to you? I won't punish you, so speak truthfully. No. I asked elder brother Vigo to show them to me in exchange for returning his sword, since I had no use for that weapon. Kohaha. You really are remarkable. Just by skimming through those documents, one can find all these weapons that aren't swords the clan could make use of. I imagine that the classified documents that only father and mother are allowed to read must hold even greater and numerous weapons. So, are you saying that one could use those to protect the clan even when I'm not here? It all depends on the next clan leader's negotiation skills. In your case, father, you have no use of negotiation skills as you are the strongest knight in existence. However, the circumstances are different for future patriarchs and matriarchs who aren't Genesis knights. Siren slowly and calmly nodded and smiled. You are correct. But we aren't the only ones who have a grasp on others' weaknesses, son. The Zipfuls also have a hold on their weaknesses as much as we do. I assume so. However, the Zipfuls don't have an adequate justification to thoughtlessly take advantage of those weaknesses. They don't have a justification? Why so? Because the role of the villain belongs to us run candles. In any case, if the next patriarch is unable to protect the clan even with all these weapons at his disposal, I will leave the clan without a speck of hesitation. I will depart and prepare my revenge against those who brought us to ruin. Whether they secretly performed experiments with forbidden magic at the Colin ruins, whether they found the Fountain of Mana and used it to print out 7-star magicians like a factory, the Zipfuls were still the clan that symbolized good and justice to the public. They couldn't openly commit evil deeds like the run candles. Haha. Revenge, you say? I see one can only get revenge if they're still alive. I see your point. It's not bad. Jean silently lowered his head in response to his father's approval. He was still somewhat disappointed by Siren's strict assessment. Well, I guess I've put up a good defense nonetheless. Father is usually far more stern and uncompromising. It's not bad. Although he had said so, Siren was actually quite content with Jin's answer. Siren believed that the youngest was pragmatic enough and had come up with an effective plan. It wasn't as if his other children hadn't come up with similar ideas in their heads. But their problem was that they didn't dare to assume the Runcandle clan would be destroyed and say it out loud to their father. Meanwhile, Jin's honest and confident beliefs were quite a breath of fresh air to Siren. The boy wasn't being conceited and getting ahead of himself. Calculating wasn't quite the right word to describe him right now. Cool-headed was a better choice, and that collected attitude of his was what Siren was highly satisfied with in Jean. It's such a pity this child was born so late. It's as if Luna's talent, Mary's wild nature, and Deepu's competitive spirit were collected into one single body. 10 years at the shortest and 15 at the longest. That was Siren's prediction on how long he could protect his position as patriarch. He was now curious to know whether the youngest would be able to turn around the current successor candidate hierarchy in that period of time. Watching over Jean would be his new entertainment and hobby now. The guests have almost reached the mansion. Let's head back inside. Under the dark evening sky, countless lights illuminated the plains beyond the Garden of Swords' front gate. Those lights belonged to the campsites that were created outside the Runcandle main house, where the attendants of today's visitors remained at. These people would have to wait under the tents for 3 days until the banquet ended. Yes, father. Oh, and after the banquet ends, I need to have a word with you. Stay on standby in the house until I summon you. Jin's promotion to a provisional flag-bearer. That was what this was about. As he had already heard about it from his uncle, Jean wasn't quite surprised. However, hearing about it from his father's mouth directly was a completely different feeling. So once the banquet ends, I'll have to set out and travel for a long time. One thing that was necessary to become a true flag-bearer was honor and reputation. Jean would have to wander around the world after the banquet in order to build up his honor. During that time, he would not be restricted by the clan in any way, so he could use his magic and spiritual power alongside his swordsmanship as much as he wanted. Using his past life's knowledge, he could even find great opportunities for himself and search for artifacts or divine objects. His memories would be a great advantage for him. The next 3 days will feel like an eternity. I can't wait to depart already. Siren and Jean left the balcony and entered the central hall. The gigantic chandelier hanging on the ceiling illuminated their faces as they took a step inside. The two headed up the second floor and waited for the guests to arrive and greet them, when suddenly, 3 butlers came rushing towards Siren. "Lord Patriarch, guests who hadn't sent a formal request to visit have arrived. What should we do?" Guests who hadn't sent a formal request. The Zipfels had come. Chapter 48. Banquet 3. The butlers continued reporting to the Patriarch with concerned looks. "There are 5 of them. Andrei Zipfel came personally with other family members. Andrei Zipfel, the Zipfel clan's second-in-command. He was given the title of Wind King due to his contract with the god of wind Meltsier and the blessing he received from the wind dragon Violetta. He was the man with the highest authority in the clan after Keliarch Zipfel, the Patriarch. He was a 9-star magician who could annihilate a couple of small nations within a morning if he felt like it. Such a powerful man had suddenly come to the Runcandle clan without any forewarning. Andrei Zipfel? Just like Baradin Zipfel, he was someone Jean envied and idolized in his past life as a rookie magician. If it were the Jean from before his death, his heart would be racing like crazy right now from excitement of meeting his idol, a grand magician even his master had acknowledged. But it seems like he's someone without any manners. Right now, he was merely an impudent and rude guest who had come uninvited. Whether he was a grand magician or a grand magician's grandfather, one had to show the proper courtesy and manners when visiting the Runcandle's venerated garden. Even Keliarch Zipfel, the Patriarch, had shown the proper respect when visiting the clan 20 years ago, and the Vermont Emperor had done the same 12 years ago. Jean discreetly turned his head to check his father, and Siren appeared to be of the same opinion as his son. What an impertinent prick. The visitors who were looking up at Siren from the first floor didn't know what was going on, but the sharp ones amongst them noticed the change in facial expression on Siren's face. Soon enough, a tense atmosphere took over the hall. The butlers kept their heads lowered and waited for Siren to respond. Hines, the first-class butler in the middle with clean, white hair, approached Siren. "Yes, Lord Patriarch. Inform Andrei Zipfel to get lost, but let the other Zipfel clansmen with him inside. And don't do it yourself. Tell the servants to do it." Jean almost choked on his saliva as he listened from the side. Although Andrei had been rude to come uninvited, to send him away at the gate like this would be a terrible insult. Only a true monarch would be allowed to refuse and humiliate Andrei like this. "Understood," Hines replied with a composed tone. Once the butlers took their leave, Siren turned to Jean with a softened look. "Do you think that my decision was a bit extreme? I found it quite gratifying. This should embarrass Andrei Zipfel quite a bit and put him in a tough spot." "Why do you think it'll put him in a tough spot?" "Father ordered to let the other Zipfel clansmen inside. In other words, if Andrei Zipfel takes his leave with the other clansmen out of embarrassment, he'll have ignored the Runcandle Patriarch's permission. But such a thing is not permitted in the Garden of Swords." "Haha, I didn't think you'd have deduced it that far. Indeed, Andrei will follow my orders. If he doesn't, he'll have to crawl his way back to the Zipfels without his 2 legs." Had Andrei arrived uninvited at a banquet hosted by another clan, the head would have had to allow him inside despite the discomfort. However, no matter how influential and powerful he was as a grand magician, he was merely a human compared to Siren, who had entered the realm of demigods. A slightly powerful human, but a human nonetheless. And even if Siren turned Andrei into a cripple, the Zipfuls wouldn't begin an all-out war against the Runcandles. However, they would retaliate once Siren passed away. Around 20 minutes later, four people entered the banquet hall. They were the Zipful purebloods who had come with Andre. The Grand Magician himself didn't join the venue though, just as the father and son had predicted. 3 of the 4 Zipfuls were anxiously looking around the hall, carefully keeping an eye on their surroundings. They appeared to be between 15 and 20 years of age. Siren smiled in satisfaction at the sight, stood up, and clapped a single time. Thump! It sounded more like a deep and powerful drum than that of a clap. As the echo resonated in the hall, the guests chatting on the first floor stopped talking and raised their heads to the second floor where Siren was waiting. The boys and girls from the Zipful clan were concerned that Siren would rebuke them in public. Needless to say, the Genesis Knight had already turned the page and held no more interest in them. Amidst the silence, Siren looked down at the guests and spoke out loud. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming all this way to the Garden of Swords. I am Siren, patriarch of the Runcandle clan. It seems I've gotten myself quite a decent son in my latter years. Thanks to him, I have another opportunity to reunite with all these familiar faces and spend a good time. So, a round of applause to Jean Runcandle. Clap, 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 clap. Cheers and applause ensued like every formal banquet. However, the banquets hosted by the Runcandles were known for being quite peculiar, where the greetings were short and the hosts didn't accept gifts. As you all may know, there are just 2 simple rules you need to follow at Runcandle banquets. First, if a fight breaks out during the merrymaking, the people involved will be escorted to the dueling arena by the Guardian Knights. Second, the loser must accept their defeat, and the winner must show mercy. Don't forget that this is a celebration. The public call the Runcandle banquets a single-log bridge party. The principle behind a single-log bridge is that if 2 people come face-to-face on the bridge, it will be followed by confrontation and dispute until one person admits defeat and goes back the way they came. And that was exactly the case at Runcandle banquets. 1,000 influential and powerful figures from around the world had gathered in one place. Many of them held grudges against other guests, so confrontation and disputes were inevitable since the guests would have gotten drunk from the available alcohol. In normal banquets, the 2 parties with animosity would just stare at each other from afar or would simply have light verbal disputes. But the banquets hosted by the Runcandles were different. If 2 drunk archenemies made eye contact, they just had to head to the arena without making a fuss. The only rules were no killing and accepting the results of the duels. Some would find it a shame not being able to kill their nemesis, but it was still quite enjoyable for the winner to pummel and clobber their opponent to the ground. The loser would even have to admit being weaker and inferior to them, which was very satisfying. Well then, I hope you all have a great time before you return. Woohoo! More cheers followed, and Jean trembled as he watched the flushed and joyful faces downstairs. A refreshing and thrilling chill ran down his spine and spread around his body. Seriously, this is one hell of a crazy clan, and unfortunately he was a part of this crazy clan. You can also head downstairs and enjoy yourself, and if someone piques your interest, you can take them to the arena. But it can't be someone who looks weaker than you, unless they insulted you and the clan. Yes, father, and I assume I'm not allowed to lose either. Obviously, if you do, I will take away everything I've given you so far. Bradamanti and your nanny included. I shall keep that in mind. Siren went downstairs first and mingled with the guests. Although he had organized this banquet for Jean, he didn't plan on bringing his son everywhere with him and bragging to the guests. Jean chuckled as he watched his father's back. He then turned around and went down the stairs on the other side. Come to think of it, it's the first time I've chatted with my father like this. Back in his past life, he could never have imagined a day like this would come. The day he and his father would chat like a typical father-son relationship. Suddenly, a surge of emotions took over him and a lump formed in his throat. But Jean then took a deep breath and erased these feelings. Having a good father-son relationship or making his father proud weren't part of his objectives for his new life. What matters most is for me to surpass you, father. In truth, that was what Siren wished for the most from his children. But Jean had no way of knowing that fact. As soon as Jean arrived on the first floor, he immediately sensed countless gazes on him, scrutinizing him. Some of them came from large groups of people who stared at him openly, while others were far more discreet. They were all surprised yet interested. Was this delicate and childish-looking boy really a five-star knight? The guests asked each other with eyes filled with curiosity. What should Jean do now? Should he confidently walk towards the crowd with an imposing expression like a lion? Or should he act like an innocent child and approach the guests, thanking them for coming today? Jean grinned to himself as he realized he had come up with ridiculous ideas he'd never even carry out. He planned on walking to the center of the hall and standing still with a composed look, as if he had little to no regard for the guests. His position tonight would be at the center of everything, and this would continue being the case for the rest of his life. The future owner of the house merely had to stay still at his position. The ones who had to make an effort to come talk to him were the guests. Jean grabbed a glass of wine from one of the busy servants' tray. The expensive and famed wine that even a rich aristocrat only opened on special days was being handed out like cheap water. Ha! Ha ha! Congratulations, brother. Can we stay by your side for a while? The first ones to come talk to Jean were none other than the Tana twins. Jean stared at his brothers standing side by side and smiled. Of course. How is your clear stone training going these days? As Jean happily welcomed them, color returned to the twins' faces. Amidst all these guests, they wanted to use Jin's fame to increase their own standing and reputation. Something along the lines of "we're close to him, everyone." Not to mention that Emma had told them to do so. Now that Mew and Anne had given up on them, their nanny had told the twins to get on Jin's good side. Needless to say, Jean had already predicted all this, and he decided to turn the page and put aside his previous enmity towards Emma. That woman was quite unpleasant to be around, but she seemed to be one of the more perceptive and sharper people of the Runcandle clan. It's getting better these days. We changed our main weapons to a greatsword and a chainsword as advised by Uncle Zed, and it's so much better now. Really? That's great. I'm always cheering for you two elder brothers. You know that, right? Oh, of course. Of course we do. It's so reassuring to know you have our backs. As he awkwardly replied, Daytona mustered all the courage inside him and placed his arm on Jin's shoulders. Meanwhile, Jean found the twins fidgeting and their desperate attempts quite endearing and let his brother do as he pleased. Instead, he quietly whispered in Daytona's ear, "Once you've done enough acting and are satisfied, get moving, and tell Emma to keep making good use of her sharp wit in the future." Daytona barely managed to prevent his face from showing his terror and nodded discreetly. Afterwards, the Tana twins stayed for another 5 minutes making small talk with Jean before taking their leave. The twins' withdrawal was like the breaking of a dam. Once they had emptied the spot, the guests who had been glancing at the star of the night began approaching him one after another. Thanks to the Tana twins, the guests had learned that Jean wasn't as irritable or ill-tempered as Luna from the past. Most of the guests tonight had also attended the banquet from 19 years ago to congratulate Luna for becoming a 5-star knight at the age of 15. And back then, they had all learned of how bad-tempered and cold-hearted Luna was. There was no way anyone could ever forget. "Nice to meet you. I am Jullard Ken from the Ken clan." "A pleasure to meet you, Sir Jullard Ken. Does the food prepared by the Runcandle clan suit your tastes?" "Nice to meet you. I am Seeger Ken, also from the Ken clan." "Likewise, I am Jean Runcandle. I've always wanted to meet people from the Ken clan who are renowned for their spearmanship." "Ha. We came running here as fast as possible when we heard the young master of the Runcandle clan had become a 5-star knight." "Pleasure to meet you. I am Johnsina Peril of the Dragon King Knights." "Oh, so you are Sir Johnsina. My nanny has often told me stories of your heroic exploits when I was younger. It's an honor to finally meet you." And so, the guests formally yet warmly greeted Jean one after another. Suddenly, one titanic man loomed over Jean, rumpled his hair and spoke loudly in a casual and friendly manner. "Ha. So you're Jean Runcandle. I was so curious to know what brat had reached the 5-star stage at 15 years old." Ha, you really are just a little brat 10 years younger than me. Good to meet you. The name's Huger. Huger didn't reveal his family name as he believed Jean would recognize him, and recognize he did. He was a talented, strong, and promising warrior from the Tuko clan. Maybe it was because he was respected and looked up to in his clan, but Huger seemed to have forgotten that he was at the Garden of Swords, the Runcandle clan's main house, and that he had to show proper manners. And so, Jean gently smiled and replied, "Oh yeah, good to meet you, Huger." The air surrounding them immediately became heavy. Tension spread amongst the guests who were watching their interaction. Chapter 49. Banquet 4. Huji's vigorous laughter and excitement disappeared, and his face hardened. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds. Jean waited for Huger to make up for his mistake, while Huji's expression slowly began showing displeasure. This wasn't some complicated issue. Even Johnsina Peril, who was entering his 50s this year, was showing proper respect to a boy decades younger than him. So Huger, who had yet to turn 30, had no right to speak informally to Jean. I'm not sure the food we've prepared will suit that tactless and rude cakehole of yours, Huger." Jean followed up and spoke softly, to which Huji's ears turned bright red. Many guests were watching the two of them. The anger and slander made Huji's blood boil and pump faster through his veins. "Oi, Mr. Outstanding Brat, are you trying to embarrass me just because I spoke a bit casually? You may be a Runcandle, but in the world of warriors and martial artists, I'm your senior by far. I was just being friendly since you're an impressive rookie. So don't get ahead of yourself." Huger spoke as if he couldn't believe the absurdity of the boy, but Jean realized he had to explain the current situation in great detail to get across the moron's empty head. "Listen carefully, Huger of the Tuko clan. Your behavior was an insult not just to me, but also to all the guests who have shown proper courtesy to me. If you really care about senior-junior relations, then you should have been far more careful than usual." "What? The first and second flag-bearers of the Ken clan, Sir Johnsina Peril of the Dragon King Knights, and everyone else. Aren't they all your seniors? If you have proper eyes and ear-holes, you should have noticed how they have behaved towards me so far." Jullard and Seeger Ken nodded in affirmation, while Johnsina watched with shining eyes as he found the situation interesting. The other onlookers either sighed or whispered to each other. "If you behave like that, then what does that make of the others, your seniors? Acknowledge your blunder and apologize. I'll turn a blind eye to this incident if you do, since I've already said my piece." Huger was about to explode in rage, but, "Oh!" The spectators let out sounds of admiration and awe, while some of them even whistled out loud. "He's got you this time, Huger. Kuhaha. See? I've always told you to be more careful in front of others, Huger. My friend, it seems you've been taught an important life lesson by the Runcandle young master. The youngest master has saved your life, you know? I'm sure you would have gotten in deep trouble later on in life due to your yapping trap. Haha. Listen to the young master's teachings. Don't tell us you're going to challenge him to a duel due to your embarrassment. I'd like to think you aren't such a narrow-minded person." The other guests naturally approached Huger and patted him on the back and shoulders to lighten the atmosphere. They were all senior martial artists who were close with Huger. Moreover, Huger was a very simple-minded man. Soon enough, his anger disappeared and he spoke with a light-hearted tone. Since my seniors are saying as such, geez, it seems I've blundered. I hope you will forgive your foolish junior for his mistake, seniors and elders. I'd be grateful if young Master Jean were to forgive me as well." "Of course, Sir Huger." A situation that could have escalated terribly had concluded itself in a warm and friendly manner. The slightly shy Huger laughed out loud to wash away his embarrassment and walked away towards his clansmen. After a while, the guests around Jean slowly returned to their original groups. Soon Luna, who was watching this spectacle from the other side of the banquet hall, slowly approached Jean. "Elder sister Luna. Haha. You really do have an innate talent at making enemies, don't you? You can behave more like a cute and ordinary child from time to time if you want." Clang. The two of them lightly clinked their glasses together. If there weren't so many guests watching us, I would have shrugged it off and moved on as well. But just now, I was no different to a representative of the Runcandle clan. So I had to force myself to become a strict and uncompromising figure of authority. You're right, but what would you have done had Huger challenged you to a duel? He is still stronger than you. I think he's around the 6-star stage. I believed that it was unlikely, and if he truly challenged me to a duel, the Tuco clan's patriarch and elders who were watching nervously from the table over there would have come running at full speed to take Huger away from me. Jean discreetly directed his gaze, and Luna turned her attention towards the Tuco clan's table. The Tuco clan's patriarch was personally scolding Huger for his behavior. Goodness! Did you actually take them into account and calculated the entire situation as it happened? Yes. Moreover, the Tuco clan's patriarch was already frowning when Huger spoke to me informally. He had already realized that his clan member had committed a blunder. Did you learn how to deal with conflicts and how to conduct yourself appropriately from an aristocrat or something? If there really is someone who teaches such life lessons, it wouldn't be such a bad idea to keep them by my side. The only thing I'm taught here at the Garden of Swords is swordsmanship after all. That's more than enough, no? What else do you need to learn? Oh no, someone like elder sister doesn't need to learn anything else. But youngest-born children who are hated by their siblings like me need to learn countless things in order to ensure their survival. Is that so? Luna adorably tilted her head with naivety, as if she truly had no idea what Jean was talking about. She was born as a predator and had no need to be wary of others during her entire life. So it wasn't surprising that Luna found Jean intriguing. On the other hand, Jean was watching his elder sister with amazement and surprise. Meanwhile, Luna thought to herself, he is as gifted, if not more gifted than I am, but he also has a good head on his shoulders. No wonder someone tried to kill him back at the Storm Castle. Just which of our siblings noticed Jin's potential so many years ago? As the guests watched the two siblings have a friendly chat, they wondered whether Luna was truly the terrifying white whale. Ever since the banquet celebrating her reaching the 5-star stage when she was 15 years old, Luna hadn't participated in any other parties. Moreover, during her own banquet, she took everyone who approached her to the dueling arena and killed about half of her opponents. People believed that Luna hated parties and being around people like the white whale from the myths. However, they couldn't be more wrong. In fact, Luna loved social events more than anyone. To be more precise, she loved hiding her identity and going to pubs down the street to attend their small parties and dance with others. Anyways, I came to this banquet to congratulate you, but as I thought, this type of event isn't my cup of tea. I'll be heading over to another, more enjoyable place now. Are you leaving already? Yeah, you're still a bit too short to dance with me right now. Once you've grown enough, I'll take you to a fun little place I know of. The brother and sister stared at each other and grinned joyfully. I'll be waiting for that day to arrive, elder sister. Oh, before I go, I should leave behind a message to the guests here like you do. Luna got up from her chair and walked behind Jean. Then, she gave him a big and deep hug from behind. Geez, why are you doing this? I almost got a heart attack. Indeed, Jean almost got a heart attack from her sudden actions. With this, everyone gathered here today will realize that I deeply care for you, won't they? Then they'll be less likely to make mistakes and behave rudely towards you out of fear of me. I'll see you later, just as Luna had whispered. The guests witnessing this scene barely managed to stop their astonishment and shock from appearing in their expressions. The white whale, who was known for being awkward around her siblings, was openly and proudly showing her love and affection towards the youngest. Moreover, the men who secretly had a crush on Luna were divided into two groups. One group realized they had to get on Jin's good side and use the boy to get an opportunity to meet and converse with Luna. Meanwhile, the other group of people were, ugh, I'm so jealous. Fuck. I also want to hug Lady Luna like that. Lord Vishical. You ugh. That brat is so lucky. Crazy jealous. And one man in particular was expressing his displeasure. He, who considered himself Luna's greatest fan, was Bouvard Gaston. Ah, Lord Vishikal, I will definitely write a poem about her tonight. HAAA, even with my perfect transformation skills, I will never be able to make someone as beautiful and stunning as her. Meanwhile, Vishikal Ivliano's head was about to explode out of irritation. He had come to attend this banquet using his position as the Ivliano clan's next patriarch. But his true objective was to observe the movements and actions of the Runcandle clan for Kinsalo. He was originally planning on coming alone, but Bouvard begged him to bring him along as Vishikal's attendant, and threw a fit until the vice leader of Kinsalo agreed to it. This decision had created so many problems and issues, but the main problem was that attendants of guests weren't allowed to join the Runcandle banquets. Thus, Vishikal had to beg the garden to allow Bouvard inside. He even had to convince his little sister to come and used her handicapped legs as an excuse to let the fat ass inside. However, the only reason behind Bouvard's wish to attend the banquet was to see Luna Runcandle. Vishikal hid his trembling fist that couldn't wait to punch Bouvard inside his coat pocket. Lord Vishikal, tonight, I'll write a poem for Lady Luna and sing it for the entire night. The entire night. Just shut up for a minute, Bouvard Gaston. Please don't be like that, elder brother. This may be an important issue for Mr. Bouvard. And thanks to Mr. Bouvard, I'm able to attend and observe the Runcandle's famous banquet called the Single Log Bridge Party. A woman with beaming eyes spoke to her. Brother from the wheelchair Bouvard was pushing. Vishikal's one and only little sister, Margila Ivliano. Lady Margila is such an understanding and kind lady. Sniff, sniff. I, Bouvard Gaston, will explore every nook and cranny of this banquet hall for you, m'lady. Thank you, Bouvard. The group of three was quite conspicuous due to the wheelchair. In fact, Jin's attention was caught by them and he was calmly watching them. But he didn't recognize Vishikal or Bouvard. He didn't know Vishikal was Kinsalo's vice leader in his past life either, while Bouvard had changed his appearance with his transformation skills. After a while, Jean shifted his gaze away from them. People were once again coming to make small talk with him, so he didn't have the leeway to continue observing them. It's tiresome, being the star of the night. In any case, where did those Zipfuls go? Jean had been searching for the Zipful visitors who had arrived at the last moment. They were, quite obviously, the guests Jean was most wary of. However, Jean couldn't find the Zipful boys and girls amidst the 1,000 guests in the hall. Maybe they were hiding in one corner of the room trying not to catch anyone's attention. It's a bit annoying, but let's try walking around the hall to look for them. Jean was about to get off his chair, when suddenly, clack, someone laid down their wine glass on Jin's table and sat down next to him. May I dare ask the Runcandle's rising star for a glass? Although her words were polite, her tone wasn't the same. It was the voice of a young woman who sounded like she was challenging him. Jean raised his head and made eye contact with the girl. He then couldn't stop himself from chuckling softly. You are. I am Cirrus Indorma of the Hidden Palace. It's an honor to meet you. Cirrus smiled thinly with squinted eyes. Translator's Corner. What a cliffhanger. I hate you for this, author. Now I gotta translate the immediately. Proofreader's Corner. Ooh, ya boi got caught. Are they gonna fight? Are they? Coco, we need to know. Translator's Corner 2. Yes. We need to know. I can't wait for the next chap. Chapter 50. Banquet 5. Of course the Hidden Palace sent an envoy to the Runcandle banquet. Jean had somewhat expected this reunion. He stared at Cirrus for a few seconds before grabbing the wine bottle. He then calmly poured her a glass. So you are the master of the Hidden Palace's daughter. Likewise, it's an honor to meet you. Jean handed her glass back as he stayed wary of her. How could you ever repay a debt to someone like me? Just think of this as a nice memory. And if you remember me from time to time, just bow in the direction of the Hidden Palace whenever you can. Well then, bye. Those were Cirrus's words back at Mummet. Back then, she was oddly kind to Jean. Not only had she immediately removed Jean from the list of suspects for the terror attack on the Moonlit Well, she had even rubbed some ointment on his injured shin. She seemed very different from the rumors Jean had heard about her in his past life. Nevertheless, Jean didn't think much about her show of kindness. She was probably nice to me on a whim as someone with more power than me. That was how Jean understood Cirrus Indorma as a person. Needless to say, this didn't mean Cirrus was actually stronger than Jean. She just believed herself to be stronger than him back at Mummet. I am quite jealous of you for growing so strong so quickly, even though we are the same age. How envious I am of your blessed Runcandle blood and body. Although she was expressing her envy, Cirrus herself was no ordinary girl either. She was already in the middle phase of the 4-star stage and was still growing at an incredible speed. Indeed, we Runcandles are fortunate to have these blessed bodies. However, the Hidden Palace's bloodline can also be considered blessed. No? I cannot even imagine how much the master of the Hidden Palace must cherish Milady. Yes, unlike you, I am an only child. Thus, it is true that I receive a lot of love and attention. Ah, is it considered discourteous to bring up such a topic? Cirrus's gaze softened a little. Her silver hair was naturally swaying, as if to accentuate her beauty. Not at all. Everyone around the world knows the fact that I'm the youngest-born child of the Runcandles already. In fact, I should be the one envious of you, Lady Cirrus. It's quite troublesome having numerous siblings. Oh my, you speak of such things so casually despite all these eyes and ears watching and listening to us. What if your siblings interrogate you about this later on? Is it not considered the youngest child's privilege to be able to complain whenever and wherever they want? Ha ha ha. In any case, I would love to visit the Hidden Palace one day. And it may not be a pipe dream if I maintain close relations with Lady Cirrus from now on. Haha, I never expected someone from the Garden of Swords to wish to visit the Hidden Palace. Alright, we shall send you an invitation in the near future. Before Jean could respond, Cirrus grabbed the wine bottle and poured Jean a glass as well. His attention moved towards the glass, which was now being filled with color once more. A few minutes went by where the two 15-year-olds didn't share a word. I'm quite certain she recognized me. Isn't it about time for her to bring up that incident? It wasn't as if soot could completely hide someone's face. And he couldn't change his voice either. Jean was confident Cirrus had recognized him today. And if the Hidden Palace's successor did in fact fail to recognize me, then I'd be greatly disappointed in her. Cirrus suddenly leaned closer to Jean. There is one thing I'd like to ask you, young Master Jean Runcandle. Yes, Lady Cirrus. Ask away. Has the wound on your shin healed already? Finally, the real conversation was about to begin. Jean smiled and shrugged lightly. Yes, it has, all thanks to a certain outstanding lady, to whom a lowly boy like me will never be able to repay his debt, who rubbed some ointment on it with her own hands. He answered in an offhand manner, to which Cirrus frowned. You're a lot more shameless than you look, young Master Jean. In this case, you will need to explain to me why you were present at the Moonlit Well in Mummet that day. And why must I do that? On that day, my subordinate, Ryu of the Hidden Palace's 7 swords, didn't manage to find the culprit behind the magic attack. It was quite a disgraceful incident for all of us. Later on, I even wondered whether the young boy I had released was in fact the culprit. Cirrus dragged her chair closer to Jean. The two of them were now sitting side by side but staring in each other's eyes, face to face. There was merely the length of a handspan between their noses. I see. That is understandable. But magic, you say? As you can see, I am a Runcandle. Do you believe I'd be the culprit? My hand has only ever held a sword since birth, never a magician's staff. Of course, I am of the same opinion. However, I assume that you were at Mummet that day on a mission for the Runcandle clan. So it is possible that you found the task difficult to achieve alone and hired a magician to help you out. Cirrus ground her teeth and continued talking. Moreover, no matter how much I think about it, the only people worthy of being assassination targets of the Runcandle clan on that day at the Moonlit Well were our guards from the Hidden Palace. Thus, as the captain of the Hidden Palace's 7 swords, this isn't an issue I can simply forget about. Although she was speaking softly and calmly, there was a hint of killing intent in her voice. The moment she had seen Jin's face in the banquet hall, she was absolutely certain that Jin had been sent to Mummet to assassinate one or more of the hidden palace guards. Moreover, she was disappointed in herself for having failed to recognize the culprit behind the attack on her subordinates and for foolishly showing goodwill to the boy. She thinks that I attacked the moonlit well because my targets were the hidden palace guards. Well, I guess she's half right since I did end up injuring some of the guards while trying to kill Al-Karo. Having read through Cirrus's intentions, Jean continued feigning ignorance. I thought we were getting along quite well, so I don't understand why you're acting like this, Lady Cirrus. Humph. So you plan on pleading innocent until the end. Alright then, if that's how you're going to be, I have an idea of my own. May I ask what this plan of yours is? I'll drag you to the dueling arena and beat you up like a sandbag. Once I'm done, I'll spit on that contemptible smug face of yours. I challenge you to a duel, Jean. Run, Candle. Goodness. Jean urgently checked his surroundings to see if anyone had heard Cirrus's declaration. Fortunately, no one appeared to have heard her as she was whispering to him from up close. Should I say it louder? Let's go. You need to pay for ridiculing me back then. At this rate, Jean wouldn't be able to avoid fighting her. Cirrus would be the perfect opponent for me to test my current swordplay skills on. But the master of the Hidden Palace's only child, Cirrus Indorma. She was definitely strong and talented for her age, but Jean remembered his father's words. Lady Cirrus, I'm terribly sorry, but I cannot accept your challenge. Is it because you're not confident in yourself? The thing is, my father gave me a stern warning not to duel anyone weaker than myself. Crack. The wine glass Cirrus was holding with 2 fingers broke at the stem. Her now clenched fist was trembling like crazy. What did you just say? Please don't misunderstand. I would love to duel you, Lady Cirrus. However, I cannot go against my father's orders. You little. Hiya! Cirrus glared at Jean with bloodshot eyes, but soon sighed deeply to compose herself. As she regained her calm, Cirrus carefully placed the pieces of broken glass in her hand onto the table. You seem to enjoy messing with me, young Master Jean. Then, should I give you a taste of your own medicine? Cirrus suddenly grabbed Jin's hand and placed it on her thigh. Now, if I were to shout out Kaya, where do you think you're touching? And shoved you away. Jean hurriedly blocked her mouth with his other hand. He then chuckled to himself and nodded in defeat. If you're willing to go that far, then I guess I have no choice. Let us make our leave quietly. You should have said so earlier. The 2 of them stood up simultaneously and made their way to the door. However, the few people who had been observing them couldn't help but misunderstand. How immoral, depraved. Did you see that, Mary? The youngest put his hand on her thigh, and I think they even kissed. Do kids these days actually behave like that the moment they make eye contact with a stranger? Unbelievable. Where do they think they're going? At the table on the other side was Deepu's Runcandle gulping down wine with his sister, Mary. From their position, it almost looked like Jean had kissed Cirrus when he blocked her mouth with his hand. We've got countless empty rooms nearby, so I'm sure they'll just go to one of those. Stop thinking about them, elder brother. They're all grown up already. They're 15. Goodness gracious. Are you telling me you also behaved like that when you were 15? That's none of your business. Or do you think you can handle the truth? Forget it. Just drink some more wine. Whether it be the master of the Hidden Palace's daughter or our youngest sibling, they won't be able to date others freely in a couple of years. So let them have their fun while they still can. The dueling arena was still quiet. The combatants and spectators would begin gathering here once midnight passed. It appeared Jean and Cirrus would do the honor of having the first duel of this banquet. Jean actually preferred this silence. Defeating Cirrus in front of countless guests would have been far too cruel to the girl. Once they entered the arena, the guardian knights stationed inside raised their blades in salutation. Have you come to duel, young master? That's right. Other than the medic, you may all take a break outside. Oh, and bring us 2 decent swords to use. Yes, we shall seal off the arena until your duel is over. The sharp-witted guardian knight replied to Jean, and the boy nodded in satisfaction. That would be perfect. The medic also read the room and left Jean and Cirrus alone. He would remain in the waiting room until the battle ended. Now, there were only 2 people standing inside the wide, round arena. Not long afterwards, the Guardian Knight returned with 2 swords. Jean told Cirrus to choose her weapon first. Please choose the one that best fits in your hand, Lady Cirrus. Jean, run candle. Your arrogance pierces through the skies, even though you're just an ordinary 5-star knight. Cirrus didn't bother comparing the blades and simply grabbed the one closest to her. Once she got in her stance and raised her weapon, the air around her changed completely. The burning anger in her eyes was replaced with icy cold concentration, and the sword she held diagonally didn't show any visible trembling. So this is how I get to experience the famous Hidden Palace's swordsmanship from the rumors. An ordinary 5-star knight. That was how Cirrus had described Jean. And she wasn't wrong. Cirrus knew that Jean had yet to learn the Run Candle's secret techniques and decisive killing moves. On the other hand, while Cirrus was still at 4-star, she was the Hidden Palace's only successor. That was why she could openly look down on Jean, who had reached a higher stage than her. Before we begin, I want you to promise me something. What is it? If I win, you must tell me everything related to the incident at Mummet. Not a single piece of information left out. Do you understand? I understand. In that case, if I win, Lady Cirrus will have to forget our coincidental encounter that day. You will never have seen me that day. Today is the first time you will have met me. Looks like you truly were doing something fishy. Come at me. As soon as she finished talking, Jean dashed and reduced the distance between them. He was planning on overpowering her with the vast difference in their physical capabilities. Sekrrr. Suddenly, a strange cold energy swirled around Cirrus's sword and froze her blade. It was the main reason why the Hidden Palace could stand tall in the middle of the West Sea, as well as the power that symbolized the Endorma bloodline. The myriad ice blades. Translator's Corner. Another cliffhanger. The author just loves torturing their readers. This is by far my favorite chapter in this novel as of now. Love Jin's interactions with Cirrus and his siblings' reaction to their immoral behavior. LMAO whelp. It's the end of Volume 2. I'll see you all on Wednesday for the beginning of Volume 3.